Medford City Council, Committee of the Whole, May 15th, 2024. Ms. Clerk, please call the roll.
Council Callahan. Vice President Collins.
Present.
Councilor Lozaro.
Present.
Councilor Levitt.
Present.
Councilor Scarpelli.
Present.
Present.
Present, 7 present, 0 absent. Meeting is called to order. There will be a meeting of the Medford City Council Committee of the Whole at 6 p.m. in the City Council Chamber, second floor, Medford City Hall, 85 George B. Hassett Drive, Medford, MA, and via Zoom. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss the fiscal 25 budget as part of our annual budget process. This is preliminary budget meeting number 6. And we have the following departments present: bonds and interest, debt service, elections, electrical, facilities, fire, information technology, law, parking, and public works. At the request of councilors, we'll be taking the fire department first, and then the parking department, and then the DPW, and then we will go in alphabetical order. So I apologize to the law department. With that, we'll start with the fire department. We have Fire Chief Evans with us. Basically, how we've been doing this is I'm going to read the budget and the difference between the prior year. I'm going to go through the change sheet on the second page. If there's anything that I missed or that you want to state, feel free to do so. And then we'd love to hear your narrative about what the department has been doing in fiscal 24 and what the plans are for fiscal 25. And after that, we'll go to questions from counselors and then questions from the public or comments from the public if there are any. So does that sound good? Good. I know it's your first rodeo up here, so welcome. We're happy to have you. Medford Fire Department fiscal 24 budget was $14,536,023. Fiscal 25 proposed budget $15,126,017.29. That's fiscal 24 budget was for 123 positions. Fiscal 24 budget was for 123 positions. Fiscal 25 budget is also for 123 positions. The increase is about 4%. And all of the change is in fixed cost growth, where we have, or the increase, I should say, new fire contract increases, step increases in promotions, and increase in the hazard duty pay. And it looks like there are some decreases in a number of line items as well, offsetting. So, but the increase is mainly made up of fixed costs, as we have heard for every single department so far. So far, we have only heard 2 non-fixed cost increases, totaling about $60,000 in a $200 million budget. With that, I'll turn it over to you if I missed anything, and we'd love to hear what your department's been up to and your plans for the next fiscal year. You may have to.
Right there?
There you go.
All right, sure. Yeah, we get the increases due to the contracts settled. Of course, we're aware of the financial constraints on the city to tighten up our belts on other items here, so we have reduced some other items there. But as far as last year goes, just want to hear what was going on in the fire department for the last year. That's about it.
Well,
Well, of course, we've been very busy.
Yeah.
We've had several large incident fires. There's obviously been some changes in the fire department here. We've had 5 people retire in the past year. Right now, we have 5 new hires scheduled to go to the academy in July. So eventually they'll kind of make up for those people that retired in the past year. But basically that's going to be our primary concern going forward here, is that right now there's 106, including myself right now, actually here working in the stations. There are 3 people that are actually out on injury right now, so that reduces that more. So really we want to aim for trying to get more bodies in the stations working on the trucks, because right now the overtime has been significant, just because we've had every time there's anybody out sick or on vacation, our minimum manning right now We have 23-person minimum manning to be working on a shift. And we have 4 groups right now where there's roughly 24 people per group, A, B, C, D group. So with 23 minimum manning, summertime's coming up. Typically there are 5 vacation slots in the summertime weeks going on. So every time somebody's on vacation now, just because of the low amount of manpower that we have there in the groups, that does lead to overtime costs. And it's right now, there's been a large increase in projects going on around the city at like Tufts, at 121 Riverside with like welding details and things like that. There's been a significant increase in detail work also. So that's kind of factoring into also, grabbing away time that people are spending at either doing details for that, covering those things, or overtime shifts at the station. So really, our ultimate goal wish list is to get more people hired, which turns into a long process. The 5 that we have going to the academy was probably like an 11-month process just to get them there. So hopefully we can work on getting that process started soon to start replacing more people that we do have. One person that's going to have to mandatory retire in February. But there are also 5 people that will have, there are 5 people that will have the time and age that they could just retire whenever they want. They could just tomorrow show up in my office and say, yeah, I think I'm going to be going now. So there's 5 more right there that could potentially go away. So that's why I'm hoping that we can just start the hiring process soon to start getting more people into the stations here to work on covering these overtime costs, slowing that down, and giving firefighters some time to catch up and come up for air, because they've been putting in a lot of time in the stations, extra time. So there are also grants that we're hoping to go for. We'd like to come up with some more grants this year. Lieutenant Danielle Marcelino, she's been working very hard on looking for any grants that we can get. There's actually a grant for hiring firefighters. It's called a SAFER grant, which she did attempt to apply for. And we won't hear from the results of that probably until either August, September, around there maybe. She did attempt to put in for 11 firefighters, which is over $3 million worth of covering over 3 years. If you actually want to learn any more about that SAFER grant, she could speak on that. She's actually here, that she could tell you more about that SAFER grant and actually like what we would kind of like the numbers that are in accordance with NFPA, the codes and things that tell you how many people you should be having respond to a house fire, the amount of people that should be showing up to a house fire, or the number of trucks that should be showing up on a response to an incident, in the levels of people staffed by your department. The SAFER grant kind of factors that into it. Like if seeing if your city is striving to try to hit those NFPA standards, they'll kind of like it kind of works in your favor that they're looking for the departments that are trying to make that commitment. So I'm hoping that going forward in the future sometime soon, maybe, we can try to increase budgeted positions to work towards that. Improve our standing to receive grants like that. Actually, Lieutenant Marcelino actually did in the past year get us a couple nice grants. She did get us, she got us a brand new Cascade bottle system for refilling our breathing tanks, the tanks that we wear going into fires there. She got a grant to cover the expense of that. She also got a grant for us to receive 10 thermal imaging cameras that will be going on the trucks and replacing older thermal images that we used to have. So she's been working hard on finding money out there for us, and she's going to continue doing that. Hopefully, I'm hoping that she's able to, she's going to attempt to work on grabbing a possible grant that could help more community interaction. That's a Cummings grant that they give out to municipalities only that have Cummings commercial properties in it. So Medford's eligible for that. I believe that's like a $100,000 grant, I believe, for over 3 years. So she's working out on that stuff. It's quite an asset. And again, the other thing is obviously all of our work requires the right equipment to do it. And we do have an aging fleet of trucks right now. That is the other concern of ours going forward. We ordered two new engines in '23. But the wait time on getting those trucks is, at the time that we ordered those, the wait time was probably supposed to be 800 something days. I believe each truck was around $970 something thousand at the time. They're telling us now that we probably won't see those trucks probably until '26. So right now we have a couple trucks that are like 24 years old that we're just we're working hard. Actually, DPW has been great, Brendan and Mike Wenzel, and they've been working very hard on maintaining the fleet for us, trying to keep it going. We've had to get creative with some repairs and seek out some companies that can help us out with those repairs. But we're managing to hold it together, try to get us through to '26 to get those replaced. But hopefully going forward, we can come up with a plan of replacing new pumpers in a timely fashion, not letting us get to the point of having 24-year-old trucks that are hard to maintain and keep together. But again, personnel is what we want to focus on going forward, and try to increase that, hopefully. Got any questions?
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to go, first I want to say thank you for your presentation. And we did have Lieutenant Marcelino present a lot about the SAFER grant, time is gone for me, but 4 to 6 weeks ago. So we did hear about that and really impressed by that work. And the trucks as well. You know, Chief Friedman was here talking about the 800-day timeline, and that's why we did approve the free cash allocation, even though it hasn't been spent yet, just to get in the queue. So really glad to be part
Would you
of
like to hear any more about that SAFER grant from Lieutenant Marcelino?
We heard more, but if she's welcome to share, I just want to go to the counselors with their questions for you first. But go to Counselor Lemming, Counselor Collins, Counselor Lazzaro. Anyone over here? No, not yet. Okay. And I think Counselor Scarpelli has some questions too. Counselor Lemming.
This was just related to the free cash and getting the fire trucks. So just questions on the logistics of that. So you said we're not going to get fired. We're probably not going to get those trucks till 2026.
Right.
So would they be, when would they exactly be paid for? Like, do we give them the money now and then we get the trucks in 2026, or how would that exchange work?
So I could get you like the contract and all that stuff, and if you want me to get all that information to you, I can show you all that stuff. I didn't bring the entire contract with me, but
The gist of the question that I'm getting at is if we don't get a fire truck within the fiscal year that it's ordered, could we just end up paying for that in a later fiscal year out of free cash? Or
It's already been budgeted for. There's a free cash appropriation approved by the prior council, so it's not in this budget.
yeah. Okay, I'm just wondering when that money would actually go to the company.
I'm not 100% sure on that. Do you?
I would have to check the specifics of the contract.
I know we had to approve. They required for the order us to have approved that the money would be spent. I'm pretty sure it's an invoicing issue. Like we'd get an invoice and pay it. Is my understanding, but I'm not sure at what point in the process they send that. I don't know if they send that after we get it delivered, because I also believe there's some provisions we get it and then you guys have to test it out and make sure it's working. So yeah. But I don't know, maybe the finance department procurement could let us know.
Okay, thank you.
We throw that in the committee report just to request procurement, let us know the timing of the free cash payment for the 2 fire engines. Any questions, Council Lemming?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Vice President Collins.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here and welcome to I know this is your first budget hearing as chief, so thank you so much for your service. Thank you for stepping up. Thank you for being here. We appreciate the overview. Just a couple quick questions for you on my end. The 123 positions budgeted for in this proposal, does that include the 5 firefighters that are heading to the academy in July?
Yes.
Okay.
So the 123 is, that's also in, one of those positions is actually including our office manager.
Okay.
And there's another one factored in there for the part-time office professional there. So those aren't firefighters.
Sure.
Okay.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. So hearing you talk about what's currently in the works and what, the future forecasting for how to make the department stronger over time, I feel like you're talking really a lot about pipeline. Like what's our pipeline for making sure that we can work more firefighters into the operating budget going forward? What's our pipeline for working more of those infrastructure and fire truck costs into the operating budget going forward? Those parallel tracks.
So again, we should come up with a plan for going forward, a timeline for that. So we can examine which trucks are going to have to be up next for replacement and come up with a plan for that. Again, get the personnel. We're going to need the personnel and get the training done and keep on getting everybody else extra training. They'll be training on the new trucks, and that's going to take up some time. Also, once you receive the trucks in 26, you're putting them on the road and getting people qualified on them, going over them, learning the ins and outs of the new trucks, and that'll take a little time too. So it's not immediate it's not quite immediate that you get them and boom, they're off and running.
Yeah, certainly that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's important to know.
Everything takes a little time, sure.
Right. There's like a lag time to all of this. There's a lag time between appropriating for increasing hires and increasing recruitment and then actually coming to fruition. There's a lag time between finally, 800 days later receiving that truck and then being able to put it into use. Obviously, in the future, I think this council shares the priority of wanting to be able to move more additional positions into the operating budget over time when our fiscal picture isn't quite so austere.
Yes.
On the truck side, that seems to me like something that really straddles operating budget and capital plan.
Right. Yes.
Has that been a conversation so far of kind of ramping up, kind of this being an ongoing investment, working that into the city's capital improvement plan so that we can be purchasing and repairing trucks on a more ongoing basis?
We're still going to have to work on the conversation about that. Because right now we just have the two that are in the pipeline right now that we've talked about so far. So going forward, we'll come up with a plan for that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up on that. After the two 24-year-old vehicles, what's the next oldest?
Let me take a look here. Was 19 years.
Okay.
And then 16 years.
Okay.
And then we have a couple trucks that are 10 years old and a couple trucks that are 6 years old, so.
All right. And what generally would be the recommendation of how old the truck should be?
Well,
When would we start calling it an old truck?
probably 10 years.
Okay.
The amount of runs that Medford is doing and the kind of beating them up. So, yeah, that's kind of like the time that we should be starting to think about turning it over,
Got it. Councilor Zara.
This is similar to the question that Council Vice President Collins asked, but there's an asterisk on the bottom. Sorry, I didn't say thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. To reiterate, there's an asterisk on the bottom under the personnel services summary that says 8 firefighters are anticipated to start in January. How is that? There's no change between the 2024 budgeted firefighters and the 2025 budgeted firefighters. Are 8 people retiring and 8 people are starting? How does that move around?
No, I believe that asterisk is regarding, hopefully starting a process on getting them hired.
So that will be then factored into, so
Yeah.
there may be.
So that's probably anticipating like the long process of starting,
I see.
doing background checks and then all the other things that come along with
It'll
that.
take a little
The
time.
process of, like how I said, they started the process back in August 23 to start hiring the new guys. And it was a long process of getting them all squared away before they can actually get their seat in the academy.
Oh,
So,
before they even start the academy?
yes. Yeah.
Okay. How
So
long are
the
they in the
current-
academy?
The current batch of 5, it was 5 started in August 23, and they're going to the academy
So-
this July.
So they didn't, that was just the starting the process of,
Right.
calling for the civil service list, selecting the name, taking I think they took 20 names off the civil service list, asked them to show up for, say to just come show up and see who's interested. I think 18 actually appeared, and then they began the process of they hired a company to do background investigations on them, and then eventually, once they got down to the 5 finally, after interviews and things like that, psych exams, physical ability tests and things like that, it ends up being a long process, and then you got to hope that the academy is going to have spots for them. So
Okay, I see.
that's the other end of it. Once you get them through the process on our end, you got to call the academy and see if they have seats available to take them. So, yeah.
I have one more question, if that's okay.
Sure.
What, in your view, would be a fully staffed fire department for Medford?
Well, over the years, 106 is certainly the lowest that we've been at. This is the lowest that I've ever seen it. But I mean, probably 2013, we were at 124. And that's like the highest that we've been in the last decade or so. So, it's just kind of like you get retirements and you can't keep up with the pace of hiring more people to replace the retirements. The department's obviously been aging out over the years, and and we just haven't kept up with replacing.
But this is like a goal. This is a goal amount of staff.
Yeah.
Got it.
Great. Any further questions for the fire department? Counselor Scarpelli?
I'm good for now, Council President. Thank you.
Okay, good, great. All right, seeing none, I just had one quick question. The 23 per group minimum manning, is that coming from the NFPA? Is that a contractual requirement? Is it
Correct.
both?
Contractual.
It's contractual?
Yes.
Is it based on NFPA suggestion or?
That's just what they've had in the contract for, I'm not sure how many years now, for maybe five years or so.
Okay. Great. All right, that was my question. Any further questions from members of the council? Counselor Singh.
Not necessarily a question. I think there may be more questions when the final budget comes out. But I wanted to thank you for your service. I know it's not been easy. I know it's not been an easy time to be our fire chief. We really appreciate it. All we hear is praise for you from everyone. And I think that speaks a lot to your leadership.
I don't know who's saying such things.
I'm sure we'll hear more from our firefighters. We want to make sure that we are getting those grants, that we are, spending the money we need to get that extra benefit. That's not only healthy for the fire department, it's healthy for our city financially as well. And so that's going to be top of mind for me going into this budget season. But I appreciate your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any comments by members of the public?
I just wanted to say, I would just want to thank, again, the DPW, IT, Rich Lane. He's been great in facilities. Paul's been fantastic. I mean, over the years, there's one of the issues with buildings in Medford is clearly that we build buildings and we've let them kind of fall apart. And
Yeah.
Paul has been on it, Paul's been on it great. But if there's a problem, Paul jumps on it and gets it fixed. We used to have, you might have seen them, we had the windows in fire prevention. I mean, since 2018, they used to, every time it rained, there was like a waterfall coming in through the windows all over the rugs. And Paul found out about it and he got somebody right in there recently and got it all fixed up so again, Paul's been doing a great job. So we appreciate that very much.
We love DPW and facilities as well.
Yep.
IT's okay. All right, thank you so much.
Oh, and building department. I can't forget building department. They show up whenever we have a late night emergency or something like that. And we need to keep the scene safe and they show up and take care of those issues for us. So thank them also. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
And of course, my fantastic firefighters. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, firefighters.
It's a laundry list on these podiums. You got it. Mr. Buckley, name and address for record, please.
Walter Buckley, 340 Salem Street, Medford. I just want to, I have a few comments. The first one is our staffing right now, you guys were talking about, we're budgeted for 123. One of them's the clerk, so it's 122. One of them's the chief, so it's 121. But we only have 106 members. So as I was talking about the summer that comes around, where minimum manning is 23, 5 guys are on vacation. That means 19 people are coming in. That's a guaranteed 4 overtimes during the day and 4 overtimes during the night, pretty much all throughout the summer. So I saw that the overtime budget was being cut. That might be an issue going forward. Also on the trucks, we have an aging fleet. We have 2 trucks that are supposed to be coming in 2026. No plans right now for any more trucks. And I saw on the budget that some of the maintenance was also being cut. I don't think it's a good idea to cut truck maintenance when you have an aging fleet and nothing coming in the new year on this budget anyway. I think that's all I had. Danielle's going to Lieutenant Marcelino is going to talk about the SAFER grant, and she'll tell you more about staffing for trucks. According to NFPA standards, we're below that right now. I believe the NFPA standards for us is 5 per truck. We have 3 per truck. So that's also an issue with staffing. Our main goal for the union is we need more members because more members work and we don't have to do details every day, overtimes every day. You know, some guys are working 5 or 6 days a week and you're working 24-hour shifts. In the overtime, in the details, you know, we're getting worn out. And I don't think it's sustainable to do it with 105 members, to be honest.
Yeah.
Danielle Marcelino, 11 Spencer Road. I come with all of the nerdy information that some of you are asking. So Councilor Lazaro, you asked about being fully staffed. There really isn't like a whole number that you would say would be fully staffed, but just to give a perspective of the history of the fire department, back in 1989, we were at our we say heaviest. There was 170 firefighters back in 1989, and we did 6,200 runs that year. We're currently staffed at 107, and we did 12,450 runs last year, approximately. So we're doing an infinitely, larger number of runs versus how few firefighters we have. If you go into the NFPA standards, which is what governs our, safety guidelines, they, like President Buckley said, about five people on each engine and whatnot. They recommend based on low, medium, and high hazards. And with our city being the construction that it is and the number of high rises that we have, they actually consider us a moderate hazard instead of the low hazard that we wrote the grant to. So what they would consider appropriate staffing would be 5 on each engine and 6 on each ladder, which would actually be a staffing of 37 every day versus the 23 that we staff right now. With the grant, we were hoping to shoot for at least 4 on each piece of apparatus, and we ended up having to cut it down to the 11, which gets under that. So we'd probably have, I think, if we got the grant and every single person came to work that day, we would be able to staff up to, I think, 4 on each engine company, or 4 on 4 engine companies, and then 3 on the other additional pieces. So it's better. But when we're talking about safety, and Chief Evans spoke about, where we're going in the future, we would like to see those numbers go up so that we have, the more we have working on the fire ground, obviously the safer it is overall. And the closer we get to those numbers, the more, the closer we're going to get to being able to get rated. We go into ISO rating, or I'm sorry, our staffing level gets classified. And once we're classed, if we're a class 1 department, that actually reduces the ISO rating for the city, which would in turn reduce the taxes on the citizens and things like that. So it's like kind of all works together. That's, it's not just because we like to hang out with more people at work. It's the, the whole thing actually plays into the city. Trying to think of what else I had. The grant, I know I spoke about it a lot the last time I was here. So, I mean, that was like 3.9 million if we get it. So that goes, the grant season is, the award season is between September 1st or August 1st and September 31st. So hopefully we'll be able to get something. And should we get awarded that, those 11 would go towards our staffing numbers, and that would actually bring us up to the 122. So with the additional 5 that we have going to the academy, we would be fully staffed with that grant. And then the 11 would be paid for by the federal government, which is even better. So, but anything beyond that, I don't know if anybody else has any questions.
I just have one. On the NFPA standards, do they also have like a formula for like the size of a city, number of high rises, like how many engines and ladders you should have?
No, I don't think they have it for, I can look into that, but I don't think there's a set formula for that. But what they do recommend is number of personnel showing up to a call, and the low hazard for a first alarm house fire that are kind of like ours, it would be 17 on the first alarm.
Okay.
We just barely get there.
Right, because there's only 23 people.
Well, no, and it goes into like the people that are actually staffed for that group. There's like a whole
Okay.
there's other little details with it, but.
Is that 17 firefighters? or-
17 firefighters on the first alarm. And then that only speaks to two-story wood construction on slab foundation.
So no basement.
So no basement and no attic. We go
Which
further because
every
we have the
building
attic,
has
the
an attic
basement,
and
the
basement.
balloon frame, there's all the other details with ours. So we would be a little bit higher than that.
Yeah.
But I can find out exactly what they have to say about that if you want.
Thank you.
We've actually gone through the IFF, which is our parent union, and they are conducting a study on the city of Medford. And I don't know how long it's probably going to take a couple months anyway, but they're going to give us all that information that we'll obviously send forward to you guys.
It comes with like a really nice formatted presentation that's like really easy to work with, and you'd be able to go through it and click and go to the standards and look at that kind of look at all the details of it on your own. We'd obviously try to present it to all of you if we had time, if you had time.
Sure.
But yeah, it's going to speak to all of that as far as like how many pieces of apparatus, how many members we should have working, and the age of our fleet. It talks about everything, which is great. So we're really looking forward to having that all done.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any further comment from anyone on the fire department budget in person or on Zoom? Did I miss a question? Councilor Lemming, sorry.
No, I just had a question because Chief Buckley mentioned that the maintenance services are being cut, and I'm seeing the line item here for motor services going from 75 to 65, and motor repair supplies going from 120 to 100. But it looks like the actuals for the motor services is about 5,000 this. It was about 5,000 this year, and the actuals for the motor repair supplies is about 36,000. So is that kind of like typical utilization of that line item year to year, or is this just uniquely? Yeah.
Just as a fellow president, I'm
Yeah, I'm not the
very
chief.
disappointed that you would demote President Buckley.
I'm not the chief.
Sorry.
Definitely not the
Sorry.
chief.
Sorry.
I believe the real chief can speak on that.
My apologies. It was a slip.
Okay.
Chief.
So we had some solidarity there.
And that was recorded too. So, okay. Oh, man. It's going to be a long night. Okay.
Council Lemming, just to, you were asking about the actual usage for the vehicle maintenance and repair?
Yes.
So yes,
Yeah.
this was actual.
So I was focusing on the motor services expenses. It says that the actuals so far this year were about 5,000 out of a 75,000 allocation.
That is as of December 31.
Well, even so, the actuals are typically a little bit over 50%, but that just
Right.
seems very low given the amount. So I don't know if this is just a unique a year where we haven't had a whole lot of repair problems, or would you say that that's typical?
Again, with the aging fleet, that could go up, that could change. So I think that's just a hopeful number.
Is there any expense that is being paid out of the DPW budget for the repairs of your vehicles?
No.
Other than the staffing for
Nope,
the fleet maintenance?
nope, like we have to, we have to still buy lots of
parts and
tires
all
for
that.
trucks and
Yeah.
things like that. There's a whole bunch of things that we constantly replace for certain parts of the trucks that get worn out consistently, so.
I guess the nature of the question is, do you typically go under your allocated repair budget, or are there some years where it's higher, some years where it's
No.
really low?
No, I mean,
Like, what does that usually look
it
like?
could go higher, sure, especially right now, we're trying to kind of Band-Aid some things here and there, so.
So just to save his vision, because my printing is very, very small. In 23, they budgeted 50,000 for vehicle maintenance and repair, and we actually went over, we were at 81,463. And then vehicle supplies was budgeted at 85,000 and we went over to, it was 95,343. And
That's-
years past look pretty much the same.
That's
Vehicle
fiscal
maintenance and
20
repair.
Was that fiscal 23?
This was last year's budget,
Yeah,
so this was
great.
fiscal year
Thank you.
24, but that was the 23 actual.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, and then 22, same thing, 22 budgeted was 50,000 and the actual was 76,259 for maintenance, and the vehicle supplies was budgeted at 80,000 and we went over at 85,000. And the years, and past years were pretty much the same. The only time it was a little bit less was when I think we had the other mechanic was more dedicated. I think he was kind of dedicated to our department, so it was a little bit less in the maintenance realm, but the supplies was just as high. So, and then our fleet's getting older, so it's just gonna get worse from here.
Okay. Thank you. The chief of staff.
I may have some slightly different information, I'm not sure, but for purposes of providing the council the information that was asked, I have motor services FY '23 actual 34,000, 20 actual 54,000, 21 actual 26,000, 22 actual 51,000, 23 actual, I did hear 82,000. There's another line that is motor repair supplies. I have 66,000 out of what is a $120,000 budget, 50,000, 50,000, 85,000, 104,000. Today's actuals presently are 43,000, roughly, call it 44,000, and 67,000 respectively. And also, just on the question of whether any other budgets like DPW cover, I agree, not the materials, but obviously the labor and the overtime is covered by DPW.
Great. Just for our edification and the edification of the public in the future, is it possible to include the prior year actuals in the ClearGov presentation?
That's a good question.
even-
I can certainly ask our folks to look into that. I know ClearGov, I know we have the prior year actuals in ClearGov.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much it can
How far
load.
back it
Yeah,
can go? Yeah.
it's a good question though.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Just generally speaking, it would be useful, although I realize it could be a lot more effort for first-year counselors to kind of see how these budgets have progressed over the years, just for context.
Yeah, absolutely. I just actually asked our assistant finance director to send me the information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
I have actually a question for the chief of staff. These are all the budgets that were printed off of the city's website, off of ClearGov.
Yeah, ClearGov had inaccurate information.
Inaccurate?
Yes.
Oh, so these are not the budgets that we use?
The actuals data in ClearGov, we discussed this in the last budget, was not all uploaded correctly.
Okay,
So the budget data, like what was the budget for fiscal '24, the budgeted amounts were correct. But my understanding is that actuals data was not all accurate that was uploaded. Because if you look at it, there's like a fiscal '21 in there where it says the city spent like $50 million. That's
Yeah.
obviously not true.
yeah, I didn't go back, I mean, some of them I did, I went back like I think until 2020, but
Yeah.
the ClearGov ones, I would have assumed because we went to that nice new software. I figured that they
Yes,
were all.
there was definitely some issues with the information that was uploaded, and we
Okay.
did talk about it last year, and we've already talked about it this budget cycle about making sure that whatever is put up there is accurate.
Very good.
So,
Thank you.
and hopefully that there's a lot of it for many prior years.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no hands raised and no one at the podium for the fire department, we're going to move to the parking department. We have Director Morrison with us. Director Morrison, I'm going to quickly read the budget figures, and then you can correct any mistakes that I make.
Oh, you won't make any mistakes.
We would love to hear any kind of highlights for this year, things you're planning for next year. And then one thing which I forgot to ask Chief Evans, but he did give it to me anyway. Anything that you're planning for in the future that wasn't included in this budget? No, and he already got me.
You want to come back up?
He filled it in. It's staffing, it's the engine. So we got there, but I didn't ask it formally. So if there's stuff
Okay.
that's not in here, but that your department needs and is planning for in future budgets, we'd love to hear about that too.
Sure.
So I will just quickly say, we have the parking department fiscal 24 budgeted $1,015,559. Fiscal 25 budget $951,563.80. That is a reduction of $63,995.20 and about a 6% reduction. There's also a reduction in the headcount from 13 to 12. It looks like the loss of one clerk position. And then there were some fixed cost increases for looks like for non-union 2% contract and minor ordinary increases, but also a significant reduction in professional services of $70,000 related to having the new parking meters. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Director Morrison. Thank you.
Okay, well, the first thing I want to correct is we didn't really lose a position.
Okay.
When we started, because we didn't have enough technology in the transition, we had more staff in the office because we were doing everything with paper and by hand. Now that we are operating totally within our new system, as 2 part-time clerks left, I reevaluated what we needed. And so we changed that to 1 part-time clerk with more hours that served what we needed, and it's working out very well.
Got it. Great. Thank you for the correction.
Okay, no problem. I just didn't want to make it sound like they cut a position because that's not, I actually did that because I want the office to reflect what we need.
Great.
And we just didn't need that extra staffer.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Floor is yours. Highlights of the year and plans for next year.
Okay, so the highlights of the year obviously is we've now transitioned a lot of the old stuff out of the system, and we're almost totally just our new operating system. We have a couple of more things left. For example, when I took over, there were $2 million in tickets, unpaid tickets. We have whittled that down to about $8,000 now.
Wow.
And collected a lot of that money, and the last bit of it is straggling in now as people are trying to get their registry holds released. So that's been exciting to start moving that out and be operating in our own system.
You said 2 million down to 8,000.
It was like $1,999,000, but basically
We'll call it
$2 million.
Yeah. That's pretty good work.
So that's reflected in what you see in our income and how it's high at this time because we are collecting that old money. At some point, I think we'll settle, into a little over $1 million a year. We're obviously covering our budget, which was a request when I was interviewed to make sure that we were paying for ourselves, for lack of a better term, and we are doing that. And I was able to cut the budget as much as I was because technology, and using that technology has allowed us to save in other costs. So you'll see like G-Techna's costs went up significantly, but that's only because we're buying more technology from them. But it looks like it went down in that professional services because as we put in the new equipment and the old equipment comes out, we're not paying that vendor anymore for the processing. So that money starts to disappear, and we'll start to see just the 3 legs of our own system at some point, and those figures will start to settle as well. But this year, G-Techna, along with G-Techna, we are developing a couple of new things. One of them is the GL zone that I'm sure you've all heard about. So that is my staff has been involved in getting that permit developed and getting all that information into the system and have it ready to go, and which we are. And we're ready to start that on July 1st. We are proposing, and I'm sure it will become before this body because we've been asked for it, some temporary passes. So for folks who are moving into the city and need something for a moving truck for the day, or someone who has a workman in for more than the 2 days at the visitors pass, covers that comes with the permit. These 2 and 3 day temporary passes will allow those people to park on the street and operate. Landlords who can't get permits because they don't live in the city and can't get visitors passes because they don't live in the city can access those temporary passes. So that's something that most of your surrounding communities offer, and there's been a lot of asking for it, and so we've developed that, and we're hoping that that's something that the city will adopt. Jim Silva, who has been just an immeasurable resource, has been very successful this year in bringing together parking stakeholders that didn't think they were. So like engineering and myself and planning and the chief, we meet on a regular basis to start developing communication streams. So like, I know when someone's going to be in digging up the road because they're not calling engineering when someone digs up their road, they're calling parking. And then we have to tell them, we don't know what you're talking about. So we're trying to develop those communications. It is going very well so that everybody knows what's going on and can answer those questions when they come across our desk. We're also have started this year assisting engineering in distributing the no parking signs for different projects, trenching projects and that type of thing, because we're now charging them for those signs. We weren't before, but we should have been. And so because we're close to Treasury, we've volunteered to take that part on, and people can come down with their permit and purchase the signs from parking. The other thing that we have also instituted this year is charging for the paid spaces when someone comes in and wants to do work in that area, in order for this, sometimes they're there for 90 days. And so that the city doesn't lose that income, they rent those spaces from us and then purchase the no parking signs as well in order to do the work. So we're just trying to have a more organized, so we know what's going on in our city. And if someone calls and says, someone's digging up my street and it's not on that list, then we know we can call inspectional services and they go over and shut it down because they shouldn't be doing that. And I'm just surprised at how often it happens. So I'm happy to see that we're moving towards having more organization around that and for parking to be part of it. The other thing, which is a big thing for my office, we found out in January that we are being honored by the International Mobility Parking Institute for technology and innovation. And so we'll get that award in Columbus, Ohio on June 11th, where I will also be making a presentation about this department because it's unheard of to have a parking department go from 0 to 100 in 4 months. It just doesn't happen. It's an 18-month project. And so people out there are very interested in how we did it. It was a lot of collaborative work, not only with people here at City Hall, but with the vendors that we also brought on board, and also being able to utilize non-traditional ways of bringing those people on board. RFPs, people tend to use for those, but there are all kinds of lists, Sourcewell, MAPC, Omni, things of that nature, where the state has done all the vetting of these folks. And so you can bring them on without having to do the RFP process, which we had to use to move so quickly. So that's exciting, and I'm looking forward to that. So that's a lot of the highlights, just being operational. We could be better staffed. That's if we had 5 more staff people in the parking control enforcement end, I think we could get more work done. That still continues to be a struggle. We get a lot of calls from residents, wanting to know why we can't do more. We just do what we can do with the resources that we have. So that is some of the highlights. Some of the things that we're looking forward to, the jail zone starting in July, obviously, the new passes that I talked about. We're also looking to restore some of the technology that was in the cars that would allow us to do LPR, like they did before, like Reef was doing before. And that would be helpful for us for two reasons. We're short-staffed and that technology helps us with staffing, but also it helps with the folks who are working alone over in the overnight shift, and it provides them a little bit more security since they wouldn't have to get out of the car. And that's important to me because it should be at least a minimum of a two-man overnight crew, which we just don't have at the moment. We have someone working 4 to 12, and then we have someone 3 to 11. I would like to increase that staffing at night, so that they have support.
Well, congratulations to your department and on
Yeah.
the incredible work that you've done.
Thank you.
And I'm glad to see that it's being honored as it should be.
Yeah, thank you.
You got it. Any questions from members of the council? Councilor Lazaro, Vice President Collins.
I wasn't expecting the parking department to be so inspiring, but thank you.
Well, thank you.
I'm very happy to hear this information and what an exciting thing that you've really turned things around and paying for your whole own department functionally. That's great. And if there is any kind of concrete way that we can help support the hiring of more enforcement officers in the future, I can say that I can see evidence of the need for that in the community. So I do understand that being something that is a critical need. But congratulations on all of your hard work. It's very evident.
Well, I have a very hardworking crew. I remind people that although I, put it together, it is my staff that makes it happen. I'm not writing one ticket, so I do appreciate them because what we've done has even surprised me. Because this is not what I promised at first. I said, a couple of years maybe we'll be able to support ourselves. So I'm very happy that we're doing it, but a lot of that is collecting that old money, which was I know when I first started, there was all these rumors about how it was $10 million and $5 million. It was actually a little under 2 million, and we've just about collected it all.
That's great.
Great work. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Vice President Collins.
Thank you. Thank
Hi.
you for being here, and want to also offer my congratulations.
Thank
It's
you.
the product of a lot of hard work, and I think it really shouldn't go unsaid. It is pretty remarkable to go from having this very, very normal municipal service be completely out of house, completely contracted, to bringing that in-house. That's something I was always excited about, and it's really quite amazing to see that become self-sufficient so quickly. So thank you for your leadership. I know I know like any major transition, it's been a rocky road at times.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Just really one quick question. I know you spoke already to transitioning from some software and technological vendors to others. I noticed the biggest line item change was the decrease of 70,000 under professional services, financial. Is that what you're talking about?
That's what I'm talking about. So basically, I try not to throw the names out there because, I try to be fair to them. But basically, as we are replacing the Flowbirds, which are very old and have been very expensive to maintain, and we're putting in the new equipment, that's allowed us to have that drop. We're not paying them the processing fees for that. Like when I started, we were paying them about $67,000 a year. And this year we will pay them $8,000. Because we've started to work their machines out of the system. There is a program called Meters for Trees that we're looking at to take the last 12 out of the system because of where they are over on Boston Ave, kind of a long walk. We would put signs up for just pay by phone there. And then for every meter we take out, the Pay by Phone Corporation would donate a tree to the city to be planted somewhere. So that's one of the things we're looking at for the next fiscal year. I think it's a great idea. I'm sorry that the tree warden is probably hearing about this now. I haven't had a chance to meet with her.
Well, forestry's on the budget tonight.
But it is my plan to reach out to the tree warden and bring her into this because obviously she would play the role in deciding where all of that went if we go with that program. And I think it would be the best way to remove the last final of the old infrastructure out of the system, because if not, if we have to wait to replace it, you're talking about $60,000-$70,000 to replace it. And I think it's where it is and where it is, we've had some issues with vandalism. I don't know how much you've heard, but it would cut down on that too, because it's just not an area that at night that's very populated. So it just lends itself to that kind of mischief. But if the machines aren't there and the parking is still there, because the signs will be there, you just have to use pay by phone. So you wouldn't have the cash option and those options. But I think that we're talking about 12 machines, not the whole city. And I think it would work in that area. And so I'm hoping that we'll get a chance to move that forward.
Well, I think that's a really exciting idea. And I think the parking department, how expensive it was to use an outside contractor, that we're keeping that in-house now, that the city is, these are city employees now, and kind of in a lot of ways, it's talking about return on investment. And wow, when you talk about getting like 12 trees donated, I think one of the many shocking things you learn behind the rail, how expensive it is to plant a single tree is one of them. So I'm really excited by that creative idea. Thank you.
I am also with pay by phone. We're looking at, the businesses have been looking at some parking that they could pay for, like some of the doctor's offices that are here in Medford Square, limited parking. I've had a lot of feedback from them. Pay by phone has a system where they could pay for their patients' parking before they even show up. And all they would have to do is find a space somewhere in the zone and go in for their appointment. And so just streamline the process. Whether they charge them for the parking or not is up to them, but we could make that service available for them.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
And one more thing while I have
Sure.
you. I just didn't quite catch, you were talking about rolling out a new type of permit for vendors that are parking temporarily while they're doing work. Is that like for contractors?
Well, I don't call those permits because they're not permanent. They would be passes.
Passes,
So we're talking about a one-day moving van pass for
Okay.
people who are moving in and out of the city, and a 2- and 3-day parking pass for either someone who's coming in and doing repair work or a landlord that's coming in and working on their building. We've had a lot of landlords that are just in this position where if there's no one actually renting their place at the moment, they don't have access to a visitor's pass. And due to our requirements for residency, they are not eligible for one. So this would allow them to come in and temporarily do that, and it's not something long-term, which is not, we're trying to make sure that the residents have room to park. And that's what the G zone is all about as well, giving people options off just their street to park, because no streets are even here. Some streets are smaller, some streets are longer. So we're hoping that that experiment will bear good fruit, and we can collect good data from it and allow us to maybe spread it around.
Great. Thank you. And that makes sense. I appreciate that explanation. And last thing I will say, as a longtime resident of the GLX zone and a person who lives on a very short street, really excited for July. Thank you.
Well, we're trying, and like I said, I can't take all the credit for that, but I'm happy to assist Jim in these projects and moving them forward. And like I said, having someone who isn't the director of any of those departments when we get together, be that head person makes it easier because nobody is in charge, he is. And so I think it's allowed us to move things a little bit smoother and quicker, having that kind of voice here to kind of rope us all in.
No, it's been in the works for a long time.
Yeah. So I'm happy to see it happen.
Thank you, Vice President Collins. Speaking for the tree enthusiasts, all I can say is no Bradford pears.
I'm going to leave that to your tree warden. I'm not a tree expert. I would never even try.
That's about all I got.
Okay.
We have Councilor Scarpelli. Councilor
Okay.
Scarpelli.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much for all your hard work. We could see the impact because of, I think that, oh boy, when you first started, we were calling the office on a daily basis, and now we don't have many calls, and that says a lot about a department that unfortunately people look at like it's evil. So, but
We know. We get it. We're never going to be loved. We get it.
No,
We're just trying to do the best we can for the residents because we are invested in doing our part to make things better for the city.
Well, I appreciate it. So I think that the only question I had is I remember that we had talked in the past that for your comfort, I know that your office was a little, how can I say it was underwhelming. Have we done anything to support you and in your comfort level in your department? Have we done anything to help with that?
I know there were a lot of people looking at it, but I think that the determination was that it wasn't cost effective to do anything. At least that's my understanding. Maybe the chief of staff or Paul Reggie can give you a better answer.
Okay, well, I think whatever we're doing, there's got to be a solution where we can find, hopefully find a more suitable location for you, especially as we're growing and as you're taking on pretty important pieces. I mean, I know that it doesn't sound like a lot, but just doing the passes for projects or for moving, that's going to be a very busy office. And, and if you look at neighboring communities, boy, they're standalone buildings. And from what I recall, yours is possibly a cubicle. So I would hope that we a little bit more proactive in finding you either a better location or another space in the building where you have that space that you and your staff deserve. So I just wanted to share that.
The upside of our space, sir, is that when people come in and pay, at least the Treasury office is close. It's right across the hall. And so they don't have to wander far when they're coming in to pay. So, 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have some questions. I don't know if the chief of staff or facilities director want to talk about the office space at all in the parking department and any
Probably
improvements
not.
we've been able to make.
Hi, thank you. Never easy to say. It's challenging to take on something that I agree is needed. In this case, there was, I don't want to speak to the technical matter of it. I defer to our facilities director, Paul Riggi, but it's one that, has some load-bearing walls. It has issues with, the ceiling space above. And when we went out for quotes or bids, my recollection is it was a $50,000 cost. So I never wanted to say to our parking director that we couldn't do that, but that is it became cost prohibitive. So that's what I can offer. If there are any questions that I can answer, I'm happy to, or I can certainly point in the direction of our facilities director.
Understood. I hope in the future we can find a way to make some changes. And, did you say 50,000?
Did I say 50,000? Yes.
Yeah, okay.
That's my recollection, yeah.
Yeah.
President Beers,
Yes.
facetiously, maybe we should make an office move from city solicitor's office and the traffic and parking. Maybe that might work.
I'm glad we're in such a lighthearted mood this evening that landed the way that it did. Thank you, Madam Chief of Staff, for the answer. Director Morrison, I just had a couple questions. You've answered most of them without me having to ask them,
Okay.
which I always appreciate.
Okay.
Just to confirm, the suggestion of additional staffing in the department was sometime in the future it would be beneficial to have as many as 5 additional parking enforcement.
Five additional parking folks would allow us to have at least be minimally staffed. And I think it would also allow us to respond to requests. It's very frustrating when people call us and say, someone's parked on my street or someone's blocking. We have to refer them to traffic because some days at that time I might just have one person there and there's only so much one person can do.
Yeah,
And so it would be nice to be able to give a better answer than that.
got it.
Yeah.
And the LPR, the license plate readers,
Mhm.
are those, I just didn't catch it. Are those going in on the parking department vehicles or the police?
Right, we have 2 vehicles that we inherited that have it on there, but it was so broken when we got it that when I had our vendor look at it, he said it's just too cost prohibitive to fix it.
Yeah.
So I waited until I could budget for it to reintroduce it into the system, and they'll be here in early June to fit 2 of the vehicles that we have with that technology.
Great. And one other thing, and it's come up a little bit, but I just wanted to speak to it directly.
Mhm.
Ever since we've made this transition, one of the concerns has been the safety of the staff in your department, both folks out in the street and quite frankly, folks at the window.
Mm.
Has that situation improved at all?
Oh, my goodness, yes.
Okay.
It really has. We're never going to make 100% of the city happy, but I got to say that probably 95% of the people are very gracious at that window. You're always going to have that one or two people who just don't want to pay their ticket or feel like they were ticketed unfairly. We do have an appeals process, and we encourage people to appeal their ticket if they feel like that's happened. But we also have a very good system, and I'm not saying that we don't make mistakes, everyone does, but we make very few because there's no pressure from me for a quota of tickets. I want the ones they write to be good ones and correct and stand up to an appeal. They take a lot of supporting pictures to assist in that, and the Parker can see the pictures that we've taken. So that's unusual. Most departments keep those pictures for the appeals process. But when I started here, I realized that we were doing such a culture change that I wanted people to see transparently what the process was. So once we usually go in and show them the pictures, that usually tamps down their anger because we're just showing them what we did. And so that's made it much easier. But, LPR will be helpful, especially with the new zone, but nothing replaces having eyes on the ground, boots on the ground. You really need that.
Got it. Thank you so much. Councilor Scarpelli.
Thank you. And I apologize. I should have brought this up. But director reminded me that now on the appeals process, I know that I haven't really had a chance to look through it, and someone just mentioned it this afternoon and wanted me to ask a question. Is it true, or is it just people that the talk around Medford again with the appeal process being something to the tune of $250? Appeal.
No, we don't charge for an appeals process. But someone has the right, if they appeal the ticket and they don't like the decision, anyone in Massachusetts that gets a ticket can go to their county courthouse and have a hearing. And they charge the $250. No.
Okay, thank you for the clarity. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
There's just one other thing I wanted to mention, if it's okay. It's not on my budget because I took it out and put it on capital, but we still need a pickup truck for the meter crew. We had an older truck that we got from DPW that they were getting rid of, but I expended my repair budget taking care of it, so I respectfully gave it back. The police stepped up and gave us a Bronco, which is low mileage. It is great, but when you see those kiosks, you need an open back truck to work with those. So that's just something that we still need to get back into the system.
Got it. Great. Thank you so much. Any further questions from members of the council? Seeing none, any comments from members of the public in person or on Zoom? In person, come to the podium. On Zoom, please raise your hand. Seeing none, thank you very much. Director Morrison.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Congratulations again for your hard work.
Okay, thank you.
DPW, you are next. So we will welcome Commissioner McGivern, Engineer Wartella, and any other of the DPW crew, if they're wanting to join us.
It's just me and Owen tonight. Mary's on vacation.
No.
So if you do have very specific questions.
How are you going to answer your questions?
We're going to do our best. But I have the budget book here, so we can dig if we need to.
Mr. Clerk,
so
let's put a motion and email Mary.
Well, I don't want to bother her during her vacation.
No, on Monday or whenever she's back. Okay, so we're going to go in alphabetical order through your departments, starting with cemetery. I think we'll just do quick. I'll read it through, pause, and have questions on each department rather than try to have everybody remember all 6 of them, because I will forget. So, starting with the cemetery division of the Department of Public Works, we have fiscal 24 budget, $1,059,320. Fiscal 25 budget, $1,118,050.11 for a net increase of $58,730.11. The headcount is remaining at 9 fiscal 24, 9 fiscal 25. And the growth in that is almost entirely salaries. It's all fixed cost growth, no new programs, no new staff, as well as inflation cost increases for supplies. And with that, what's going on with the cemetery division?
Sure. So you are correct. And what I will say, what we have going on at the cemetery is capital-based. I'll just kind of give you a rundown of what we're doing. So, when I started and, I assessed each division, what's going on, cemeteries needs are capital-based. They're expensive. So just to tell you the things I got spun up here, let's see here. We have an architect currently doing some design development for both cemetery buildings, the maintenance garage, as well as the quarters, caretaker's quarters. Both of those buildings are historic, so we're working with the Historic Commission to see if we can find some funding for the actual projects. Those buildings have seen a bunch of deferred maintenance. So I think the estimate was total work to bring them back to, full condition would be, full preservation condition is about $8 million for both buildings. So we're not going to do all that at one time, but we do have to plan for that because they're historic. We're also working on some cemetery expansion projects, 2 of them. One of them we call the 7-acre project, and another one is just moving an operational pile of soil. So we open up a lawn. So we got those going on, and what else? Yeah, that's it. So those are substantial projects that we're working on at the cemetery. So I'm happy to answer other questions on the operating budget as well, but it's pretty typical. The raises are due to the CBA update.
I have one question. Is the 7-acre project the land that's across the access drive for the Brooks Estate?
Correct.
Okay, so it's on the north side of
Yep.
the drive, almost entirely. Okay, and the remediation on the soil. I've read the trustees' reports. How's that going?
Sure. I wouldn't call it remediation necessarily. There was one small amount that needed to be.
Removal.
Sure, that's a better word. So it's going well. So we've been trying to do this in a cost-effective manner for a couple of years now, and we're working with a new environmental engineering company. They're actually right in Medford Square, Vineyard Engineering, and they're helping us get rid of some of the more contaminated soil. There's a little bit of contamination. Who knows where it's from? That site has seen many uses over the years. So that's been removed. That's only a very small percentage of the overall pile. The rest of it is quote unquote clean. So we'll be disposing of that either on site at an engineering project or just to a quarry.
Got it. And I know I'm on the MMA Public Works Committee, and a lot of public works folks from around the state talking about how the cost of removing dirt is going up and up. So I'm glad to hear it's mostly not contaminated.
Yeah, we're getting creative with how to, get rid of it. So we have some ideas in engineering. We have some ideas at some of our other sites at the cemetery, but
should we put out an open call, or
what's that?
should we ask the residents if they want any dirt?
No. It's soil moving is a very regulated here in Massachusetts. So, I could go into details, but there's no need to.
Nope. I know. Sorry, Tim. I couldn't resist.
That's okay. I won't go into the difference between dirt and soil. I'll save you guys.
Well, that's not up to me. If anyone asks, there's nothing I can do. All right. Well, that sounds good on cemetery. Any questions from members of the council on the cemetery division, soil removal, et cetera? Seeing none. Any questions from members of the public regarding the cemetery division? Great. Engineering. We have our city engineer. Just very quickly, fiscal 24, the engineering division, $495,830.00. Fiscal 25, $543,661.93. Headcount staying the same at a 4 headcount for fiscal 24 and fiscal 25. Net increase $47,831.93. And it looks like all of that is fixed cost growth. Step increase, clerical unit increase, and the 2% non-union COLA increase. And if you wanted to share anything additional about engineering, anything you've been up to this past year and any plans for next year.
We've been up to a lot. We have a lot of plans. We're going to stick with the CIP, and I'm just going to kind of keep it short on time since we've kind of gone over this in the past few meetings, and just be mindful of everyone else here. So if you've any stuff that you want me to talk about, I'm happy to. But basically, our CIP is going to be focused on water replacement and paving roads and sidewalks, and any type of infrastructure projects going on. I know that we want to do a lot of flood mitigation work in and around the city. We've reached out for a lot of grants to do this work so we can fund it, and we're moving ahead. Yeah.
Great. My only question, or two councilors' questions. Councilor Lemming.
No, this is just like more of a general engineering staffing question. So, but I figured while I have y'all here, might as well ask it. So something we're doing the zoning overhaul, and I think I've talked to Owen about this, but just something I'd like to get a bit more understanding on. So part of it, which I've been having a lot of meetings on, is implementing a transportation demand management zoning ordinance. And I've been kind of shopping around different departments, begging people to fund and put somebody on a TDM study in the future, which would be required at the staff level. Just from my understanding, how much staff time does it usually take to coordinate that, even once you found a firm that's able to get something like that off the ground?
I wouldn't have the information for that. Our staff is at its capacity right now, and that would have to be out of one of the on-calls.
Sorry, one of the on-calls?
Yeah, it'd be on-call consultant engineering.
Could you speak more?
It would be one of the on-call consultants that we'd have to reach out to do that for. Does that make sense?
Okay, so you would reach out to an on-call consultant who would then find the firm to actually do the
No,
study?
we have firms that are on call that are on a 3-year contract with us, just about to renew in July. And we would ask them to do what you're describing, what we've talked about before.
Okay, so it wouldn't actually take any staff time for the people that are being budgeted here? You just kind of
Not
ask a firm to
necessarily.
do that?
We do manage a lot of these projects in-house. So like while other consultants do the work, there is some time that our staff manages to make sure it checks in, make sure that they're, spending the money appropriately.
And I understand that your staff are at capacity, but about how much time does that usually take to check in with
I don't have that number right now. We're pretty stretched thin at the moment, so.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Lemming.
Thank you.
My only question, what maybe in future budgets, not in this budget, would the engineering department be looking for in terms of additional staffing or additional ordinary expenses?
It would basically be based on capital improvement plans and projects. So the more we upgrade and ramp up more infrastructure projects, we will need more staff to go along with that. If we don't do that, we're going to be hiring resident engineers at a higher cost. So, we try to, plan accordingly.
Do you expect that level given the capital plan that we have now? It's a tough question, but is there a certain threshold? Is there a time in this capital plan where you expect the work is going to be so great that you'll need someone new, or would it require a bigger capital budget before we get there?
Yeah, okay.
The answer is yes. And it's because of some of the things that we've talked about. So the utilities are coming to age, for example.
Right.
So, I had a meeting on that today, for example, with one of the on-call consulting engineers, Owen was there too, talking about, something we'll talk about when water comes along. But to get a grasp of the amount of both water works, sewer works, drainage works, and roadway works, we know that some portion of that has to be contracted engineering, soft costs with either on-call engineers or in-house engineers. On-call engineers are more expensive than in-house engineers. So we know that we have tens of millions of dollars worth of work to do just in water alone over the next, I don't know, 10 years, let's say, just kind of making up numbers that we can, order of magnitude, so we can understand this. So, when Owen talks about the CIP, we have it pretty well built out for a couple of years. But, 3, 4, 5 years, it starts to get a little fuzzy. That's understandable.
Yep.
And it's fuzzy to the point that today where we're really relying on that rate study that we're doing with the CIP study to really understand, do we need one more engineer, 2 more engineers? How are we going to split it with contract work? What loans are available? What are the forgiveness rates with, the infrastructure plan? All of these questions come into play almost as soon as the information starts rolling in from that study, which it actually did today. So just to start. Yeah.
Just a little bit.
The first check-in meeting was today, basically.
Great. Well, that's great to hear. And I know how hard you guys are working and how much progress we've made already. And it's been really helpful. If folks want to reference our late April Public Works and Facilities meeting where you guys give us the update on the street and sidewalk assessments, I think that's a great thing to reference so that we don't have to talk about it now. And really excited that we'll have something similar coming through around our water and sewer infrastructure as well. So thank you so much for your hard work. It's much appreciated. Any further questions for the engineering division for members of the council? Vice President Collins.
Thank you. Not a question, just thank you for the presentation. And as you are both as well aware as anybody, you're carrying the load for the stuff in the community that constituents notice and complain about and look forward to improvements on as much as anybody in the city. Same goes for your staff, everybody who's working on improving water, sewer, roads, sidewalks. So I know that alongside the year-to-year operational budget planning, there's also the long-term forecasting like you were just speaking about, Commissioner. So thank you for your hard work, and we really appreciate it. And, I think here we get just a glimmer of the magnitudes of planning that have to go into what actually results in improvements that we get to see around the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the public around engineering? Seeing none in person or on Zoom, we'll go to Forestry Division. Forestry Division budget fiscal 24, $616,473. Budget fiscal 25, $623,106.94. 5-person headcount in fiscal 24, 5-person headcount in fiscal 25. All of the increases, fixed cost growth and salaries based on the DPW contract. Turn it over to you, Commissioner McGivern.
Sure. Not a lot to say on forestry. You'll notice it's more of a modest growth on just that 1% number. We had, there were some opportunities based on actuals there to trim it up a little bit. As some of you may recall, a couple of years ago, my first budget, I spent a considerable amount of effort to get forestry where, a step in the right direction. We had 2 staff before, now we have 4. So I would call this budget settled at the moment. It certainly can be revisited in a couple of years.
Great. Any questions, on the forestry budget? Councilor Callahan.
I just have a general question. I know that we're having a tree inventory done, and I've come to understand that we probably lose more trees than we plant each year. Do you have a dream for the forestry department that would allow us to plant as many trees as we lose each year?
That's a great question. So another project we're working on besides the inventory is a vulnerability analysis. And that really is going to lead us towards both of those things. It's going to lead us towards have enough information for basically an urban forestry plan. We don't have that right now. So we have no basis of saying that we need to plant X number of trees more every year to sustain, and we need to plant them over here, and we need to plant this species with that one. We don't have that information right now. So my dream, I guess is what the word you use, I think, but I call it a vision, but the vision would be that I have that document in my hand, I can share it with my tree warden, and we can understand the order of magnitude of the work that we need to do over a period of time, just like everything else. So that's where we're headed. I don't know what those documents look like yet, but I do know that the data is looking good that I've seen, and some of the graphics and information that I've seen in the vulnerability work is also pretty impressive at this point. So looking forward to it.
And just follow up, do you know when we'll get the tree inventory and the vulnerability assessment?
I think we're due, the tree inventory, I believe, is wrapping up. I think we added on to a little bit. I would imagine that should be done soon, summer. And then the vulnerability project that is MVP funded has a deadline wrap up at the end of June. And then we are going for another grant to extend that to a year from now, June. And that to continue the efforts to get to that master plan. But June deadline was when one round ends, so we'll have a document, a deliverable, yeah.
Right. Any further questions from members of the council regarding the forestry division? Seeing none, any questions from members or comments from members of the public on the forestry division at the podium or on Zoom? Seeing none, we will move to highway division. Fiscal 24 budget, 11,624,596. Fiscal 25 budget, $12,475,611.23. Increase $851,015.23. Headcount 24, headcount remaining at 24 for fiscal 25. And the entirety of this is also, again, all fixed cost growth. We have about 120,000 related to COLA increases and the contract changes for the 24 staff members. And then we have, excuse me, a big increase here in our newly negotiated waste management contract. So we are at going from 7, I'm assuming everything in 5293 is the waste contract. If there's anything else in there.
8.7?
You're going from 7938 to 8727?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. It's 3 contracts instead of 1 now.
Right, because of the new 3, yeah. Okay.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
In, just so we can clarify that, I want to just point out that that's about a 10% increase, which is more than 2.5%. Just going to leave it at that.
Well, just to provide a little clarity on that number, it's a conservative number. Let's put it that way. Because it's a new contract. There are some unknowns, more so in year 1 than in year 10 on a contract like this. Oh, I don't think we're going to end up spending $8.7 million, put it that way.
Great.
There is a buffer in there because of the unknowns. The recycling costs, processing, for example, we don't know what that's going to do. So, you know, we could spend it all. I hope we don't. It's a bad sign if we do.
Yeah. All right. And just on that note, when we move to year 3 of the contract, or year 4, whenever the biweekly trash kicks in, is that going to drop our rate? Are we expecting like a reduction at all?
There is, but the reduction is actually spread out over the life of the contract.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was to make it affordable year to year. So we actually have a credit at the beginning that we, you know, that resolves itself, I think, in like year 5 or 6 or something. So,
okay, great. Thank you. In terms of the highway division, anything you want to talk about that you've done over fiscal 24 and any big plans for fiscal 25? And again, I just want to note that the trash budget in here is like 66% of the highway division. So when we talk about $12 million for the highway division, most of that is trash removal.
Sure. Highway is our biggest budget, and actually, sorry, water is our biggest budget, but our biggest budget in the general fund world. And it's also the catch-all budget. So, you know, we pay fleet out of there, and we take care of all the fleet of the city, police and fire. So that's important to know. Also, clerical, administration, me, new deputy are all out of the highway budget. So anyway, it's kind of deceiving when you look at it. They're just, you know, some of you are new counselors, so I just want you to understand that. So it's a little bit hard to understand if you don't know who the people are, for example. With that said, I'll take this opportunity just to go over, you know, sort of the DPW's budget. And I know probably Bob has talked to you about this as well, but The water enterprise fund is about 63% of our budget. We buy about $22 million worth of water. So that's also something that sort of makes our budget look bigger than it actually is. So I don't really have a $40+ million budget. It's more like a $20 million budget. Then about 36% is general fund. And we also have some perpetual care and sale of lots in there as well. So that's kind of the overall pie chart of it. Water and sewer is our biggest, highways second, cemetery, parks, forestry, engineering coming in after that. And some of the highlights from this year, deputy is the biggest one. So we just hired a deputy. He started this week. So it's fantastic. I've been spread very thin. So this is going to give me an opportunity to focus on some of the bigger picture items and have this gentleman, Scott Brink, focus on operations. So that's exciting. We have, as you know, from Alone, we now have some in-house paving equipment that we've been trained on. That's very exciting. We talked a little bit about that in our subcommittee meeting. Let's see, we have 3 new waste contracts. That's also a very big thing. So as we just talked about a little bit, we're moving to a system that collects compost, trash, recycling, and yard waste. The compost is what's different. Compost makes up a lot of your trash weight, and is typically the element of trash that attracts things like rodents. So the idea would be, and trash disposal costs are going up and up and up. So the idea is to separate the compostables, make soil from that, and then to reduce the amount of trash tonnage we have. So folks may have received something in the mail alerting them to signing up for compost. We're collecting a waiting list now, and that service begins in July, but it's limited first year. So first come, first serve. So that's important. And then there's some other things I just want to mention that you may know about, but you may not. It's not all highway related, but it's just because highway is sort of the catch-all budget. We're doing a lot of water quality, regulatory work. That's in preparation for new rules that the EPA is making that go into effect in October. So there's a lot of work there to prepare for that. We bought a camera van, so that allows us to camera our own pipes. Before we were doing that via contract work, but the technology is affordable. So we can do that in-house now, which is going to save us about $200K per year, something like that. So we kind of did that in the budget, I think last year. So that we did that this year, trained up on it, and we got a couple of guys that are really excited about it and using it. It's turning out really great. We have a new water quality controller. We have a couple of field improvements that we did. We helped the school system and their varsity team do some refurbishment on Playstead Field. We redid the courts at Hickey Park, and we're trying to line up 2 more for this year. Let's see what else. Owen didn't talk about this, but a lot of people have been asking questions about the work we did up at the dam. So we did do some maintenance work up there that was significant. So
this is the dam at Wrights Pond.
Correct. Yeah, we own and operate one dam. It's the Wrights Pond Dam. So some people may see some changes up there, but it's all normal and it's what we're supposed to be doing. Lots of personnel movements within DPW this year due to folks leaving, positions getting filled within the union, which kind of causes a domino effect up the totem pole, so to speak. So that's been a pretty exciting thing. New faces in new positions, learning new skills. So it's great to see. Another thing Owen didn't really talk about, but I'll talk about, his office has made some significant improvements to the permitting process around here. And he's, I think, doing a fantastic job holding utility companies accountable, taking on some of the work that I had hoped to have more time working on when I was city engineer. And he picked it up and he's been doing a great job with that. And that's really helping us with our pavement work and making sure we fix those gas sinkholes that seem to pop up all over the city because of their trench work. Other exciting things is some things that we got going last year. flushing program. We talked about the rate study for water, CIP with the rate study, and then doing a hydraulic model. Those are all very exciting things. And then we talked about the tree inventory. So just wanted to give that sort of overview of some of the things that are happening. As far as next year goes, what I'd really like to continue doing is making significant improvements to operations. Now that I have a deputy, I'm going to be able to do that. So that's really what I'm looking forward to. And that has all kinds of benefits. If you understand operations, you know what I'm talking about. If not, that's okay. I can answer questions. And then I'm also excited about the new pavement equipment and seeing if I can get more use out of that to save resources when it comes to potholing. I think a lot of people see the same places being potholed over and over again. So the idea would be is we now have the equipment to replace that as a box out, as well as being able to do our own longer sidewalk repairs. So there's more to come there, and we've talked about some of the future ideas I have for that. So I hold those visions close, and I'm trying to pick away at them as much as I can. So.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner, for the Highway Division. Any questions from members of the council on the Highway Division? Councilor Callahan.
The compost, you say you're building a list, and currently we have a relationship with, is it Garbage to Garden?
Correct. Yeah.
And is that how
Contract.
the list, that's how the list is built, is through them, or is there also a separate list?
Do them. So there should be, Garbage to Garden has all kinds of resources that they've already put out there. I know we have links on the website to sign up, and
MedfordCompost.com.
Yeah, MedfordCompost.com. That's it. Thank you. And so you sign up there, and like I said, I think it's either 6,000 or 8,000. I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Is it 4, 8, 12, right?
Say again?
4 in the first year, 8 in the second year, 12 in the third year?
No, I think it's 6 in first year.
I think you may have negotiated that after we last talked.
Maybe. Anyway, please don't hold me to a number. It's a number. It's in the thousands. It's in single digit thousands that we're capping off for year 1. Then it opens up year 2 more, and then year 3, we're hopeful to get everybody on board in year 3.
And so I just, so that I understand,
Sure.
it is through Garbage to Garden that we're doing
Correct.
our long-term compost project. It's not going to end up being in the city. Okay.
No, we have a contract with Garbage to Garden.
Perfect.
Yep.
And it's the 3 contracts. It's waste management, trash, waste management, recycling, Garbage to Garden, compost.
No, waste management, trash and recycling, garbage to garden, compost, and then save that stuff, yard waste.
Got it. Great. Any other questions on the Highway Division? I have one, Tim.
Yes.
The reduction in the sidewalk repairs budget from 90,000 to 50,000.
Mhm.
Are we making that up somewhere else? How is that going to impact what we can do there?
That it's not going to impact what we do. It's at least for this year. It's that's the line that we use to buy concrete.
Yeah.
We haven't bought a lot of concrete, so the actuals are lower. I'm focusing more on asphalt work, actually, to tell you the truth. We do have some concrete work to do, but as we've discussed before, it's not like I have a sidewalk crew that can pour concrete every day. So it's much more efficient for things like sidewalk repairs to do them in asphalt at first, usually, and then come back and do them in concrete. That's what you're seeing is, if you look at the asphalt line, that one's spent down. So I think that that's based on actuals. So as we move forward year to year, I want that to go up. I want to be spending more on concrete in-house, and I'm trying to line up as much as we can do this year as well.
I know we've talked about it. I just want to kind of bring home a couple of questions and a couple nuances that have come before me even since we last talked about it.
Sure.
What's generally the timeline between a temporary asphalt patch and a concrete, filling with concrete? How long is that usually lasting right now?
Sure. It's going to depend on who does it. So if it's like, say, for example, a water repair that is scheduled with our water division, then that gets on a list. And I'd say within, usually a couple of months, that goes from asphalt back to concrete.
Yeah.
But then there are other issues where doesn't always make sense to put back concrete. We find that a lot around trees.
Yeah.
So we're not going to put the concrete back a lot of the times. once I have a little bit more time and Owen has some breathing room, we're going to spend some more time investigating alternative materials around trees.
Okay.
Right now, neither material is good that we use, asphalt or concrete. So there are materials out there. They're expensive, they're finicky, they require different types of maintenance. There are success stories and there are failure stories. So it's about, spending some time to figure out what the right one is and then working to fund it and figure out how to do it. So.
Yeah. And my other question, you kind of got there, where we have, older trees planted in sidewalks that are basically shortening and narrowing the sidewalk, or the roots are uprooting and it's an asphalt patch. How is the department making decisions between forestry and highway and your team around prioritizing saving healthy trees versus allowing for accessibility for people with, in wheelchairs and other forms of mobility devices? How are we working through that conundrum? Because I understand it's a difficult one.
I didn't mean to do that, sorry. It is a little bit of a difficult situation. However, the good thing is that Mass General Law has some pretty clear guidance on this. Trees are protected, and ADA accessibility is also the rule of the land.
Yeah.
So you do have these conflicting issues. So the obligation of the city is to try to figure out a way to honor both. That's almost impossible. However, I just recently went to Charleston, South Carolina, and I was impressed by the way that they do it because their old oak trees are protected, and they have been growing in the street for a very long time, and they will literally build the street around the tree. So some of the trees are just in the middle of the road, and so they've redesigned the road basically around the tree. So I'm not saying that we're going to do that here this year. But,
right. Certainly not for every single one.
Of course, right. There are trees that are out there that are 100+ years old that there's no way that our tree warden is going to say, let's cut down that tree. So she has that authority, especially, if it's a healthy tree. But then, of course, you have a situation where someone with a stroller or a wheelchair can't get by. So there's got to be a design solution that saves the tree to do that. And, we can't, there's thousands of these locations all over the city. So we just got to pick away at them one at a time, unless we have, some big project that is going to solve a good chunk of them, or the worst ones. So now there is some synergy between that and the sidewalk assessment and the work that we're trying to do on the sidewalks. I don't know if it's been shared with this body in particular, but the sidewalk heat map that we have that shows, where the high foot traffic is compared to the sidewalk repair that needs to happen. A lot of those sidewalk repairs are around trees. So that automatically goes into the queue for Owen and his team to assess, are we doing this block of sidewalk or that one? And then when we do that, the trees are taken into consideration. So that's the opportunity. Do we need to ramp up the grade? Do we need to do anything drastic, like take somebody's land? Maybe we need a foot of property on someone's property, or maybe we need to change the width of the road and move some curbing around. So those are the ways you solve those types of problems.
Got it. Thank you. When you were in Charleston, did you make it to City Hall?
I drove in a tour horse carriage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's cool.
That's pretty cool.
It was cool. Yeah.
Well,
their DPW cleans up the horses.
Wow.
So anyway,
so should we work on that, or?
We don't have enough horses.
Yeah. I just wanted to note that the clerk was there. He might have something to say, but their council chamber is gorgeous. So if you want to take some inspiration there too.
Yeah, I was walking down the street and we walked past City Hall and I said to my wife, let's go see the city clerk. And she was kind enough to give us a tour of City Hall and took us to their council chamber, and it was amazing. And I was also impressed by Charleston.
Yeah. What do they have? A multi-million-dollar Washington portrait in their council chamber?
She told me they have like $40 million worth of art on the walls. I mean, there's one there's a portrait of George Washington that they're having trouble insuring because it's so valuable.
Wow.
Paging director, Riggy. He said, yes. All right, we're in. Thank you, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions from members of the council, again, on the highway division? Any comments from members of the public, either in person or on Zoom? Seeing none, we'll go to Parks. Parks Division, headcount 8 in fiscal 24, maintaining at 8 in fiscal 25, $951,016 in fiscal 24, up to $957,577.56 in fiscal 25 for an increase of $6,561.56, about 1%. And all of that is in DPW contract increases for the salary. So it's all fixed cost growth. And it does look like some of that was obviously offset by some reductions. Commissioner McGivern.
Sure. Thank you very much. So I went over some of the things that we've been working on in parks, the field refurbishments. Parks is pretty simple, light forestry. Right now, I feel like we have we have full staff and we have new leadership. Things are going great. There's a lot to be said for the hard work that the Parks Department puts in this time of year right now, and making sure that the 15 fields we have operating right now are playable every day. So props to them. And again, a modest increase here. The fixed costs are really the thing that's happening there, and then some trims based on actuals.
Great. Any questions from members of the council regarding the Parks Division? Seeing none, any questions from members of the public regarding the Parks Division? Seeing none, that concludes the general fund DPW. So all the departments we just discussed were coming out of the general fund, which the biggest funder is the property tax levy. We're now going into water sewer enterprise fund, which is funded by the water and sewer ratepayers. And we have in water sewer enterprise, fiscal 24 budget, $25,956,537. Fiscal 25 budget, $26,879,692.12. Increase $923,155.12. We're going from a headcount of 21 to a headcount of 20. And that's about a 4% increase in the budget. Most of that is in fixed costs of about 1.1 million. The vast majority of that being the contract increase with the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority, which is going up $784,517. There are also a number of other contracts going up significantly for $150,000, an $88,000 increase based on the new DPW contract for staff and staff raises, and some increased costs for field work around water mains and stormwater. There's also some new expenses. This is only the third time we've seen that, all budget. And it's for 2 printers, safety equipment, and parts to replace fire hydrants. So with that, again, 1.1 million in fixed costs, 800,000 of that is MWRA, only 42,000 is a new expense, and it seems for some pretty basic stuff. I'll turn it over to you, Commissioner McGivern.
Sure. So we did a lot of work on the water budget last year. So I haven't done much this year as far as changing things around. So the head count you had, I think, is wrong. I think there's a mistake there. So we have the deputy, which is new, but that position was in the budget, but it's a new person. Water quality controller, also a new position, new person. I'm sorry, existing person, but a new position.
So that's going from 2 to 3.
We added a couple of positions in water last year. So those are them. So there was some increases there having to do with technology, the way that we test water, the way that we protect ourselves. We bought some trench gear. And then we have a flushing contract that we're trying to really get some headway on. So we're trying to start that actually this summer. So we added that to the budget last year, and I think we increased it a little bit this year for field work. And then, a lot of the other increases were contractual things that we typically do that just, get more expensive. And we pay stormwater things out of here too, like catch basin cleaning and things like that. So.
Got it. Just so we can make sure we have the right stuff in front of us. I had it in here as +1 deputy commissioner, +2 MEO3, -1 assistant water network admin, -2 maintenance crafts, -1 equipment repair. That sounds like that's not accurate.
I think I need to look at that.
Okay. Can you submit to us an updated head count?
Yep.
Thank you. That was my only question, was just, I just had a question about that. Is the deputy commissioner being paid from the water sewer budget, or?
Yes, I believe it is.
Okay.
Yeah, part of the rate study that we're doing, it will be indirect costs as well. So we do calculate indirect costs in the finance department, and they figure out what that's going to be. However, one of the things that we should really take a close look at is based off of, especially the CIP, maybe some future growth in water and how we're going to tackle that. The indirect cost will change as well. So we're going to take a look at that as well.
Got it. Okay. Any questions from members of the council on the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund? Councillor Callahan.
So is this the fund out of which we have to repair all of our 120-year-old pipes?
Yeah, or that, or grants.
And I apologize for this newbie question, but where in here am I looking for like an increase because we got to start repairing these pipes? Like which budget item?
Not in operating. Yeah, okay. So eventually I'd like to have things in operating. So we're taking steps. Last year we take steps. We needed another water quality coordinator. So we have that now. Now we have two. That was an important step. This is all in kind of getting in preparation for the regulatory changes. And, new equipment for testing lead, for example, is another thing. Where you're going to see the planning for replacing pipes and, those costs are in capital improvements. So the CIP is where you're going to see those. That is a little bit fuzzy a few years out because we don't necessarily know where we should be focusing our attention. And that's what we're having worked on as part of the rate study, because you can't just look at rates. You have to look at what you're going to be spending that money on and why. So we're starting from a place of how old are our pipes? How fast do we need to repair them or replace them? And then what do those costs look like over time? How do we fund them with debt service? How do we fund them with grants if they're available? How do we fund it from just retained earnings? So those are our sources, and putting the pieces together on how to fund it is going to be not something that comes out of the operating budget unless we're doing in-house relays, which I would eventually like to get there because contract work is expensive. And if we have the skills in-house, then we can save some money there. So in other words, having a few people in-house that are dedicated every day to just relaying water pipe. Now, of course, that's a vision, right? But where we are today is trying to understand the magnitude of the problem and then how do we get there over time? And what does that framework look like?
And I hope you don't mind if I just follow up a little bit.
Sure.
So we're trying to wrap our heads around an issue, and you're saying if we had sort of in-house people, which I imagine is, because you say it's part of the plan for the future, like that is really how a city would normally be run, is you're using this budget to make sure that you maintain all of the lines.
Yes.
So should I be looking in this budget for like us at least beginning to do some of that work this year, this fiscal year, or are we
Yes.
just, okay.
So the maintaining part is a lot of what this budget is doing. So things like the flushing program, which is in here. Things like the new water quality controller, even the deputy, because of how that works. There's a supervisor position I'm also trying to fill that we have open right now. So all of those contribute to the strategy to get to a solution for the big problem, so to speak. So that's what you could be looking at in the operating. And then, of course, staff can also do relay work, but we don't have the capacity to have a crew, every day doing relay. We actually tried it on what's the name? Was it Union? Yeah, Union. We tried it on Union Street. That's right. And it worked out great. We do have the skill sets. We can do it. So I'm trying to model the vision based off of that. A lot of towns and cities don't have the skill set to do that. I think we do. It's not necessarily hard work, and it can be trained. But with that said, that's not going to solve the problem. It's going to be a combination of in-house and contract work over quite a long span of time. Just to give you some numbers that we were talking about today, we were talking about like a 35-year plan. So that's what, those are the numbers that we're talking about here. A couple of miles, 2 to 3 miles of pipe replacements every year. Some of that is contract work. Some of that is in-house work. So hopefully that answers your question.
And then my final question, I think,
Yep.
is about retained earnings. Retained earnings, by that, do you mean what enters the enterprise fund from the rates that is not spent in that fiscal year? That
Correct.
should be something that we are, sort of filling that bucket year by year.
Sure.
Is that something I can see here, or is this really just a budget? So we're not seeing sort of what is being retained?
You can bring that question up with a finance director. I'm not sure if, so when the retained earnings are certified, then we know what that balance is. So I think the last time was 8 million or something like that. It's going to go up. One of the reasons why it is what it is and it's kind of going up is because we don't necessarily know what the healthy number should be, and that's actually also going to be a part of the rate study. So we should be keeping retained earnings at a specific balance or hovering around a specific balance all the time. But right now, we don't actually have enough information to know what that number should be and what it should be next year and the year after and the year after and the year after. So that's going to be part of this study. I'm sure I can't speak for Bob, but I would imagine that the certified funds, are available at some point in the process of the budget process. And we use retained earnings for, we can use it for debt service for example, that $3.5 million loan that we took out for the Willis Avenue water main replacement. So, that debt service is paid out of the retained earnings, I believe. I don't want to speak for Bob again, but it's worked into the enterprise fund or retained earnings or something like that. And then, we're planning on buying some vehicles, for example, out of the retained earnings, which is, when you're talking about $8 or $9 or $10 million account, $500,000 worth of vehicles is significant, but not a drop in the bucket, but a significant thing. But it's not. We can't just dip into retained earnings to go replace all of our pipes out there because we need to have that healthy number in there. What is it? Is it 5 million? Is it 6 million? We'll find out. And then we'll maintain that and we'll know what it should be every single year. And, we'll work with Bob's office to, our consultant will give us information and then we'll work with Bob's office to figure out, how to do that over time.
Thanks.
Thanks. Commissioner, are we, and Director Dickinson may have the answer as well. We're not budgeting for a surplus of retained earnings in the enterprise account, correct? So we're not expecting more revenue than we are planning for in expenses. I know we're not in the general fund.
I think there's typically a surplus.
But that's usually because expenses were not made. Right? Like we're not saying we're budgeting budgeting for 27 million in revenue, but we're only going to spend 26.5, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying. No, I don't do that.
No, retained earnings would come from turnbacks, basically,
right,
from the expense accounts, or additional revenue coming in.
Right. But the budget, it's a balanced budget.
It's a balanced budget
for the enterprise account.
But, usually people don't spend to the end of their actual available budget, obviously. And if they did, we'd have to do budget transfers when they went over. In terms of revenue, it just, people use more water, we get more revenue.
Right.
That's how it works. So whatever's left over at the end adds to what we had at the end of last year, and that's where your retained earnings come from.
Right. And I just wanted to put that out there just to note that both additional money going to free cash reserves in the general fund or additional money going to retained earnings, it's not that we're budgeting to raise more money than we spend. No. It's that we're either spending less or raising more than we expected. Great. Thank you both. Any further questions on the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund from members of the council? Any questions or comments from members of the public, either in person or on Zoom? Seeing none, I just wanted to note that if there are significant changes to any of the divisions, we may have you back after the budget proposal goes out. Not that we're expecting them, but who knows? So it's just because it's a new process and you're here earlier than normal, we appreciate it.
Not a problem. You know where I work.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Owen. All right. Next, we have, right on topic, debt service, bonds and interest.
Yes.
So this is one of the places we have two numbers. We have our general fund debt service and our water and sewer fund debt service. General fund debt service budgeted fiscal 24, $5,090,533.77. Fiscal 25 proposed $5,391,318.49 for about an increase of $300,000. Water and sewer fund debt service, fiscal 24 budgeted $273,968, and fiscal 25 proposed $1,743,643.75 for an increase of about $500,000. The total debt service increasing about $800,000. Again, $500,000 from water sewer fund and $300,000 from our general fund. And it also looks like most of that is increased principal payments. And I will turn it over to Director Dickinson.
It's debt service. We borrowed the money, we have to pay them back. The only additional thing, there's most of it's long-term debt service. There's $60,000 in there for the $1.5 million that we borrowed short-term for the fire station planning.
Okay.
But beyond that, it's all out there. It's all in the statement of indebtedness. That's what we owe. That's what we have to pay. So it's relatively boring.
Is this keeping the debt service amounts about at the percent target for the budget that you guys set? Was it 3% or 5%? I can't quite remember.
Actually, I don't know where we are with that. But the city right now doesn't have a great deal of debt in general. But I'd say that what are we looking at? General fund 2025. $5.3 million out of 100 million. It's very low for the, compared to the total budget for the town.
Yeah.
City.
I remember the Collins Center presentation on the capital improvement plan, that the goal was to get us to a certain target percentage to increase bond capacity at some point. If you could just let us know kind of where this puts us on that track, on that target. I think that was all the way up through fiscal 29, if I remember correctly.
Sure.
So.
Well, I mean, obviously, obviously that's coming off in the next few years, which is great. And the less the general fund has to borrow, obviously there's going to be some rather major expenditures in the next few years that will be debt funded.
Yeah.
The fire station, we're planning for the fire station, but we're going to have to pay for it.
Yep.
So.
Understood. And then if we were to do a debt exclusion for major capital project, that means that it wouldn't come out of the general fund debt service, correct?
No, it would come out of the general fund debt service, but it would be financed by a Prop 2.5 exclusion.
Okay.
So that would just, on the tax recap, it's Form DE1, you just put in how much that is, and that gets raised additionally to what you raise and appropriate, because it's beyond the bounds of Prop 2.5 until you've paid off that debt.
Right. Okay. But that would potentially allow us to plan for other uses for the capital that may have gone to the fire station.
Yes.
Great. Any other questions from members of the council on the debt service bonds and interest budget? Seeing none. Any questions from members of the public on the debt service bonds and interest budget? Seeing none, thank you, Director Dickinson. Electrical Department, I saw Mr. Randazzo earlier. I'm guessing he went to do better things. Oh, sorry, nope, elections, give me 1 second. I think I may have I put elections in the wrong place. My bad.
The words are pretty similar, to be fair.
No. I saw him here diligently waiting, and he is always at the beck and call, I think, of all of us. And he's back.
I have no problem.
Is that all right? Come on, Steve. We'll take you, Steve. I saw you running, so you get to go. Anyone who runs into this room.
I was expected to be a couple more on the list. I apologize.
No, it's my fault, actually. I had it out of order, so that's on me. But
good evening, council. Thank you for having me.
Good evening, Mr. Superintendent. It's great to have you here. Thank you so much for all the work that you do. We know how important it is. So I'm just going to quickly go through the budget. For the electrical department, we have fiscal 24, 644,100. Fiscal 25, the new budget at 678,804.84. That's an increase of $34,704.84. The salaries raises coming from the contract and 2% non-union. Some fixed cost increases and increases to vacation time and sick time. Some increases in electrical costs that we're paying more for our streetlights, and some increase in some meter charges as well. But it's all fixed costs going up. So with that, we'd love to hear from you about what you've been doing this year, your plans for next year.
Unfortunately, I had some medical issues this year, and I was unfortunately not around for a lot of it, but I did the best while I was around. We're continuing to try to make upgrades to some of our pedestrian crossings, make them more ADA compliant, help the hearing impaired and so forth. So we're working on that. Pretty much it's not an exciting department to really speak of. It's generally things break, traffic signals, street lights. I do the best I can to get those repairs taken care of. Unfortunately, sometimes it's not as easy as others, but I do try wherever I can.
Well, we think you're electrifying.
Thank you.
Any big plans for the upcoming year?
Continue the same. Try to make any upgrades as possible, as funds allow. Continue to take an opportunity to upgrade lighting to LED, which is kind of a no-brainer in this day and age. Saves on maintenance, saves on power. It's a win-win for everyone. Just pretty much keep the same and keep trucking along and hopefully keep the residents happy.
Wonderful. On the switch to LED, how many of our lights would you say are at LED at this point?
Street lights are roughly around 5,600 street lights that they've all been upgraded to LED. That's not including probably 130 of the decorative style that are throughout our squares. The school department on their properties, I know that Freedom Way is being addressed. That's obviously a concern, and I understand. But I mainly maintain the streets and stuff like that, and just try to assist any department, such as the schools if they're interested. And a lot of input also is given from Alicia Hunt, who does a great job with, solidifying funds and stuff like that.
Great. And then on the traffic signals, do we have any that are really old that need to be replaced? Or?
We do have some that are inundated, for instance, Boston Ave and Winthrop Street. That's one of our oldest. We have also Arlington and Boston Ave, that intersection as well. Those are a couple of our oldest. Central Ave in Spring is one that has a lot of deficiencies, but that is kind of beyond my scope. So Todd from the traffic engineer has been assisting with that, and I kind of lean to him for his guidance because that's kind of his expertise. I'm more of when a vehicle knocks down something, we go and make sure it gets put back up and stuff like that.
Great. All right. Any other questions for Superintendent Randazzo? Vice President Collins?
Thank you. Not a question. Appreciate this very straightforward budget, but just thanks for the work that you do year round. Obviously, lighting is really important to residents, whether they're walking around, driving. So we see the fruits of your hard work every day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions? We are very lucky to have you and grateful for your work. So with that, just going to see if there's anyone from the public who would like to ask a question. Seeing none, thank you so much, Steve.
All right. I appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, elections, sorry for that. It's my bad. And early in your tenure, I apologize for that as well. We have our new elections manager and the chief of staff here. Are we in week 2?
Yes.
All right, so I'm sure you got it all handled. You know every detail. Just want to thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We have had, this council voted a couple years ago to shift to this model of an independent elections department under an elections commission. We've been working with the administration around that. We've had some great points of agreement, some points of disagreement. But we are really grateful. We had some conversations earlier to just be like, let's call it elections department. That's a great thing to make it clear that the commission is just overseeing and you guys are the elections department. But yeah, I just wanted to give some of that context. I'm sure it's a pretty new department, independent, although served many years with this clerk and others as the registrar of voters. I'm going to read through quickly basically this budget summary. Then we'd love to hear so far from, and also want to thank Chief of Staff Nazarian, who has been running elections for a little bit now. Just go through the budget, hear from both of you about what's been happening in fiscal 24, your plans for fiscal 25, anything you think this department needs that wasn't able to get into this budget, but maybe needed in the future, and then we'll go to questions from members of the council. So fiscal 24 budget, $340,196. Fiscal 25 budget, $328,629.20. This is a decrease of about 3%, $11,566.80. Decrease is caused by having one fewer election in 2025, fiscal 25 than fiscal 24. So the salary line for seasonal and overtime seems to be, reduced. And also this decrease is offset by increases from the contract and ordinary expenses due to inflation around fixed costs. The headcount is remaining 3. I believe that's 2 full-time, 1 part-time. And that's staying the same over the 2 fiscal years. So with that, I'll turn it over to both of you.
I'll begin, and it's my distinct pleasure to introduce Danielle Petrantonio. Normally I get her last name wrong, so I'm delighted that I got it right this time. Danielle has been working in the field of elections for the past 8 years. Danielle was most recently the Director of Elections in the City of Everett. In fact, in addition to that, Danielle actually supported the City of Medford through the March 5th presidential primary, along with her counterpart, the City Clerk and Chair of the Elections Commission, Sergio Cornelio. So we were very, very fortunate that we were able to make this connection through Attorney Lauren Goldberg from KP Law, who found us some help, and they found Danielle and they found Sergio, and they assisted us by, I think we probably called them at least once a day throughout that election once we finally made that contact. And so Danielle had actually worked for us as a consultant, and that was incredibly helpful. If it wasn't for Danielle, Sergio, and I've said this before in front of this council, but there were a lot of critical team members that allowed us to be successful in that election. I was just there to make sure that we paved the path to make sure that the other team members were successful, but the people who did all the work were Joan Lamone, as you may know her as Babe, then Jan Joyce. She was our former head clerk in the office who came back and supported us throughout. There were a number of other individuals that are called the A-Team, Advanced Team, as they've been named by our Election Commission Chair in the past. Which brings me to our Election Commission and the Chair of our Election Commission, Henry Maloran, who obviously did a lot of heavy lifting throughout that election to make sure that, you know, I knew what was next. He put only as much as I needed in front of me to be able to handle what was next, and he was really methodical about that. I'm you know, forever appreciative of the extra care and attention that he and especially Joan Lamone put towards this past election. Without them and without the help of the City of Everett staff, who we now have somehow convinced to come here, because, you know, I think Danielle will tell you she enjoyed the work environment. She enjoyed the staff, the A-Team, and, you know, I'll let her speak to that. But so I'm really happy that Danielle's joined our team, and that's the long and short of how we got to where we are and how Danielle's joined our team.
Well, I'm certainly interested to hear what you think is a more contentious electoral environment.
We'll see after the first election here.
That's the right answer.
So I'll just, the way we've structured this, considering the fact that Danielle is on her second week, you know, I'm going to go through the budget. I'm going to go through the goals, and, you know, obviously welcome Danielle to make any additional comments or additional points that she'd like to add. And, you know, either one of us may be answering your questions if you have any as we get through this budget. So
great.
So as was already stated, you know, this is a decrease over last year's budget. It's in terms of the bottom line, and that is because the number of elections we have. And in general, we do recognize that the complexity of this coming election is greater. So we've taken that into account into the budget. Otherwise, it might have been a larger decrease than you're seeing, because we do recognize that there's a federal election and it's going to bring out a lot more voters than we have on a year-to-year basis. Federal elections inherently bring out the most voters, obviously. So just going through our budget narrative, essentially, the department continued to work in the basement storage area, isolating elections matters into their own dedicated and secured room. And before that, the elections space was co-shared with the city clerk's office. I do want to send my specific thanks to our city clerk, who turned around on the drop of a dime as I was taking on the role and responsibility, and allowed us to separate his city clerk items into the vault. So city clerk and elections items were completely segregated at one point, because we just had such a sheer volume of ballots coming in at that point, and we wanted to make sure that we had the necessary space and the place to put people and organize. And, you know, we were in a situation where we knew we didn't have an elections manager. The office didn't have the other part-time position filled, and we're still working through that. And we were really wanting to make sure we had, you know, for a lack of better terms, and no pun intended, really, like the path cleared so we could spread out, do what we needed to do in an organized manner, and have as few irregularities as possible. So really appreciate that, Adam, Mr. Clerk. I really, really appreciate that. We provided election worker training and manuals in March of 2024. It was really interesting because I think it was probably after 1 week post the resignation of our former elections manager, after 1 week of searching far and wide to try to find a temporary elections manager to serve the city of Medford, and finding there were no individuals out there who were either willing or had the necessary experience that was needed, because there were so many changes in the Votes Act of 2020. It dramatically, it made the work dramatically complex. As I've said to other folks before, I don't consider myself any type of expert in elections. I will say I probably know 25% of elections, so Danielle will correct me if I get anything wrong here. But from what I understand, it's dramatically changed things. We also had another consultant who helped me with a lot of office work. That consultant was the former town clerk of Westminster, but she didn't have any experience with vote by mail or early voting. So we had to continue to kind of supplement. Getting back to my prior point, you know, after a week of searching far and wide. We emailed a listserv after, we put feelers out after feeler out after feeler out, and I kind of got to a point where I realized we weren't going to get there. Then I kind of accepted that this is something I'm going to have to do. And working with Commissioner Maloran, one of the first things we had was, I remember distinctly someone telling me, well, we have a training in a couple days for our inspectors. We can't do a training in a couple days for our inspectors. That's not gonna work. We're not prepared. I don't know who's gonna do the training. It's certainly not me. These inspectors are gonna know more than me. So we did cancel the first training, and right around that time, we found Danielle and Sergio, and they actually came in and they did our training, which was a subsequent week later. We rescheduled that training and everything went, everything went very well. And so Danielle and Sergio, her counterpart, actually updated a lot of our information, and I'm sure, Danielle will take it from where she left it off the last time she worked on it, candidly. As the council knows, the Elections Commission and Department instituted a model of transparency. This was based on, frankly, comments that were made by the City Council as to issues and concerns that came up in past elections. And we felt it was important. The mayor was obviously supportive. The commission was supportive. We felt it important to write up when there were major irregularities in the process. The council received 2 reports. Those 2 reports, I believe, if not one or both, might be in the council's packet. So, you've done your portion of that transparency, and we appreciate that. I've, of course, handed those reports to Danielle, so she has that information as well. And, Danielle has asked, what does that section of the budget narrative mean? And I've explained that that's the expectation moving forward. So she understands that as well. So I think we're on a good road to continue that model and, continue to share anytime there's something reportable. As far as goals for fiscal 25, these are, the ones largely that I was able to jot down. I didn't apply a lot of pressure to Danielle to try to give us others, so maybe more to come. But for now, we are going to continue to work to recruit and train additional election workers to ensure that we have enough people to backfill for elections. We are also presently reviewing whether these workers need to be W-2 workers and on the city's payroll. So that's an evaluation that's going to be going on. And we're going to continue to review all processes for elections to ensure efficiency. Candidly, Danielle and I were just talking about one major element of this budget process, which is the elections, city elections or town elections now have the ability to get reimbursed from the state for costs associated with early voting and vote by mail. And in summary, now that I've gone through a process, Danielle's obviously done it in her prior community as well. Now that I've gone through a process to actually submit for that reimbursement, I understand the system well, and I understand, the parameters of the system. And I think we can plan to maximize our reimbursement. We can pre-plan for the election to maximize our reimbursement. We were actually just chatting about that. So that's one avenue when I say continue to look for opportunities for efficiency, but it's efficiency and cost effectiveness ultimately. Obviously, we want the department to continue to attend professional development trainings, review all polling locations for accessibility and backups. We did get an email from, I'm not sure of the organization, but they mentioned an issue with potential accessible parking at one of our voting locations. I've transmitted that information over to Danielle, and I've asked her to take a look at it. So we're going to continue to pursue those reviews as well. And then one thing I think Danielle could probably talk to is some of the work in particular that she could speak to is some of the work that she's done in other communities as to expanding voter outreach. So I will pause there, and it's a good segue for Danielle.
Okay, yep. So one of the things I was most passionate about was getting the youth involved. So we actually worked with one of the government teachers at Everett High School. We would hold voter drives a couple times a year. We would go into the government class, kind of teach them about the process of voting. We implemented a student poll worker program that kind of grew over the years. I think last year we had about 50 students who worked, so they could do everything that an adult poll worker could do. They kind of buddied up with the veteran poll worker, and everyone loved it. The students were a big hit. The students loved the older poll workers. The older poll workers loved the students. They formed great relationships. We also held voting drives at a lot of the city events. So we would go there, have a little booth for voter outreach. We reached out to some of the local colleges, sent voter registrations to them, sent out, saying that we needed poll workers to those schools to try to recruit them that way. Worked with the local nursing homes to get as many as the residents registered and able to vote on election day, whether that was us actually going there and helping them vote or sending the ballots and picking them up. So just trying to get as many people of all ages and all backgrounds registered and able to vote. There's a lot of, different ways you can vote now, by mail, early, in person. So it's accessible to a lot of people. I think it's just getting that information out there so that people know that it's available and how they can vote in the most convenient way for them.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions, Vice President Collins?
Thank you so much for being here. It's great to meet you. Thank you so much for joining the team. And I know you've heard a lot from Chief of Staff, I'm sure, and your colleagues at the City Hall. How happy we are to have you on board.
Thank you.
And very glad that the Chief of Staff can drop down to just one full-time job. I know it's probably more like 1.5 at least most of the time. But we're really happy to have you to have you bring so much experience and enthusiasm to this role.
Thank you.
So we're excited to work with you and support you however we can this election year and going forward. I have just one clarifying question on the budget before us, which I think is probably more for Nina. I think you spoke to this, but if you could just run me through, I see the decrease in salaries part-time, I see the increase in salaries seasonal. If there's a short way to just explain how that all shakes out.
I think so.
Okay.
I am not the most brief person, as you've probably
Well,
noticed.
me neither. So
But I will
get it.
try. In summary, there's this reimbursement for the early voting costs. So a lot of those costs have shifted over to that area. And we've right-sized this to take into account that reimbursement area where we'd ultimately apply a lot of those costs for early voting and vote by mail. And I apologize, say that again?
Would that be for the seasonals, for the part-time?
It
both
would be
depending?
for essentially for
Okay,
seasonals.
that makes
Yes,
sense.
yeah.
Thank you.
Essentially, when crafting this budget, through you, Mr. President, when crafting this budget, I found that there wasn't enough lines. And I just expanded those lines. And it was actually one of the first things Danielle said. And I said, well, I went to the City of Everett website and I stole the budget lines that you guys had and I used that. So, so that this is it's just kind of being drawn out a little bit more.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Makes sense.
Just like to say, we're very grateful to have you here. Welcome to the city of Medford. And I'm sure that everybody here as an elected official can tell you our own stories about how chaotic the November elections were and how personally stressful it was. I would just encourage you, if you see anything in the elections office that you think could be fixed in terms of making things more efficient or, just anything you see, then please feel free to bring it to council's attention or to fix it yourself. So I went to I chatted with some of the elections workers a couple of weeks ago and just kind of saw how they were doing manual data entry on what looked like very outdated software, just spending a lot of time entering the voter registration cards prior to the March elections. And I'm not an expert on things like that, but it did seem like there was some room for improvement, either in terms of whatever software they were using, or just, I'm not really sure if you would have any ideas on that, but if there is a way that council can help support that in the future and make the elections department more scalable or efficient or less prone to having these kind of mistakes that we've seen in previous years or all years.
Unfortunately, the system is a state-run system, so we have to use that one. They are in the process of upgrading it. It was supposed to go into effect before the September election. Now it got pushed back to next year. But it is a system that was started in 1996, so it is a little outdated and slow, but that's the whole state has no option but to use that. So we're just trying to work around it the best we can.
Yeah, it was a lot of the clerks there just taking in these handwritten cards and just typing in names, and it seemed like it was taking them 5 minutes
To
a card.
register people?
Yeah, and that just I was just kind of looking at it like, okay, I hope that this can be done better, but obviously if it's a state-run system, then.
Well, the good news is most people now kind of register online, whether it's at the RMV or so we don't get as many of those handwritten cards as we used to, but those that we do, we still have to type it ourselves, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just had one question. Sorry, Justin, go ahead.
Might be similar, but I wanted to ask about when we were doing last year's election budget, something that came up was the drop in the number of FTEs, and there was a big conversation about whether that was the right choice, and I think a lot of different perspectives on it, and I think I can understand different perspectives on it. I don't expect any change to this budget. I think for the position that we're in right now, this is reasonable, and in our last governance committee meeting, we talked about letting you come on and then evaluate the situation and maybe come back to us to talk about this in half a year or so. But I did want to raise that to your attention, that this is a point of conversation on the council and with the administration about the resources needed for this department. And so, again, just wanted to put that nugget out there. I don't know if the president had questions about that, because I know he had, this was something that we had talked about before too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, it remains to be seen to me. Obviously, things are getting done, and I appreciate the update and transparency, and I just think it remains to be seen. We'll see how these upcoming elections go, given that this is the budget we're looking at citywide. It makes it a little tougher to say, let's add 2 positions in the elections department. That'd be the most of any department in the whole city.
Yeah.
But I certainly still have some outstanding questions of if the staffing level is sufficient for the level of work, or if there needs to be additional budgeting around the part-time and the seasonal. Respect that it's a moving target, and respect that your leadership, and we'll see how it goes. And I trust that there will be an honesty that if there is more needed, that you'll come to us with the need, and I respect that. So my question was actually around more like Councilor Lemming's question, just around the voter list. It does seem to be getting up there in the number of registered voters relative to the city population. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe not, but do you think that the updates to the state registration system or any work that you guys are planning to do maybe after these 2 elections might weed out some of the folks who have moved away but might still be listed, and maybe they moved out of state so they didn't re-register in Massachusetts, so the state system isn't saying pulling them out of Medford and putting them somewhere else, those kind of things?
Yeah, so we just actually got a list in the mail from Florida and Maine, I think, that had sent us some lists, but unfortunately, you can't remove voters without a signature unless they haven't voted or filled out a census for 4 consecutive years. So once you didn't vote in 2 consecutive federal elections, after that 4 years, when we run the inactive report to send out the confirmation cards, it will delete those voters.
Okay.
But confirmation cards have to be sent out. So right now, there's no one eligible to be deleted in that sense. But I think in the next couple of years, that will catch up with that after this federal election, maybe in the next years. But fortunately, even when they moved out, you have to wait that 4 years if you can't get a signature. So a lot of the times on the census, they'll send back moves, but they won't give us an address to send the delete voter form.
Yeah, there was an error in 2021 where people were removed, marked inactive inaccurately, and then all marked active. And I don't know how the back end of the system works, but could that maybe have restarted a bunch of 4 consecutive year clocks at that point?
Yeah, I think, I don't know how in the past if confirmation cards were sent out every year, but that has to be logged in the system. You have to for the clock to start has to be every year.
Yeah.
So I think that's where like there might have been like 1 year where it either didn't get sent out or it didn't get put in the system. So now we're starting from scratch again.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Any further questions on the elections department? Seeing none, any questions from the public on the elections department? Seeing none, thank you so much and welcome
Thank
to
you.
Medford.
Thank you.
Facilities Department, Director Riggy, thank you for sitting it out.
No problem.
And the rivalry between the council and IT grows.
Facilities.
Yeah, exactly. I saw we forced Rich to eat some food. I was like, he's so bored and hungry, he went for the food. Welcome, Mr. Riggy. Facilities Department, I'll just go through it. You've watched everyone else, you know what's up. Fiscal 24, $1,619,513. Fiscal 25, $1,865,594. One head count fiscal 24, that's you. One head count fiscal 25, that's you. Looks like about a 15% increase. All of that being essentially fixed cost growth. A little bit of an increase because of the non-union salary. Utility costs, electric and gas prices going up. That's a budget of increase of 140,000. And then the cleaning contract increased to 100,000. And that's really it. So if you want to share about what you've been doing fiscal 24, plans for fiscal 25, and then anything that isn't in this budget that you think may be needed for your department in the future, either new staff or other expenses.
Sure. I was able to get 3 of our buildings under HVAC maintenance contracts, which was a big thing. I've been consolidating services to save money. So we have only one pest control company, one alarm company. So we're saving money that way. You'll see, it's also the Chevalier is part of the budget. That's just one staff person right now. Most of the money for the Chevalier comes out of casino funding or paybacks from our client that uses the facility. One of the big accomplishments was finally finishing the facade project at the Chevalier. Engine 3 is getting ready, hopefully, to reopen. I'm hoping that July 1st, we can get that company back to Engine 3 on Salem Street.
And was that about concrete, warm
That's
weather?
the slab project.
Yeah.
The slab was failing, so we needed to get that done. And as we opened it up, we found additional problems. I've also done some waterproofing and other items there at that station, so they can, be dry and we can protect that slab. So that'll be opening. This year, I'm working on fire headquarters redesign, starting that project, and anything else that may come my way. Council chambers windows will hopefully be replaced totally.
Wow.
I did some glass replacements and we found some structural issues with the windows. So another big accomplishment is the city now has a house doctor, 3 firms on call. They're architectural firms. So any department in the city and also the school department can call these architectural firms. They've guaranteed pricing for the city of Medford for 3 years, and they can provide architectural support for any major projects that we may encounter. That was something that the city has been trying to accomplish for 3 or 4 years, and we finally got that accomplished last year. So that was a good thing.
Great.
In the future, I think what I'm really going to be looking at is the facilities department and actually creating a department. It's, last year I was only here for a couple of months when I did my budget. So I was still trying to figure out what was up and what was going on, but we will, there are some maintenance workers that have a different reporting structure. I think we need to bring them into the facilities area and maybe increase the staff. So I'm not just one person for 18 different buildings in the city.
Yep.
And
Is that 18 including the schools?
No. And I'm technically not supposed to
work at the schools, but I've been helping as much as I can in the schools for support and helping them with different projects at the schools.
Yeah, I think there's great opportunities for synergy there, but we will leave the law for another day. I have a question. Any other questions? Vice President Collins.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate the, straightforward, very legible budget. The two questions that I had on the utilities and the contracted services you already explained.
Utilities, the city was very lucky about almost 4 years ago, signed an electric contract, which electric rates were very low, so we were guaranteed for 3-year pricing. Unfortunately, that contract came up last November. Electric prices went through the roof. We have another 3-year contract, but we're still paying substantially lower than if we went through National Grid to get our electric. So that's it. Contracted services, I found that the DPW building does not have any outside cleaning. So we're adding that starting in July. And also the library is open 6 days a week, but we only provide cleaning for 5 days. So we're adding the 6-day Saturday so we can make sure the library is clean for the residents.
Great. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. My only question.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry, I just missed part of what you were saying about the house doctor. Is that essentially like an on-call?
It's an on-call architect. It's a state model where they have that for any state agency, and cities and towns can put out an RFP to request architecture firms to provide pricing. We reviewed it, and then we selected 3 firms to be on call for the city of Medford.
Great. Thank you so much for all of your proactive work.
Thank you.
My only question, do the new windows come with drapes?
That we have to talk about.
Oh.
I've received some ARPA funding from the mayor to do some things. So hopefully I can stretch the ARPA funding to figure out once we do the windows, what we can do with the shades and the drapes.
Simpler, we
So-
don't need 4-piece drape.
We'll be talking about that.
All right. Yeah, aesthetically, we should do some. I agree with that. Yeah. I thought we should keep the ripped one, though.
I've
been focused.
I'll bring that to the.
Everyone else been talking. Chevalier, 32,000, staying flat. Is this all funded through casino money or
No.
half funded?
That's our portion
Okay.
of that. The rest of the funding comes from the casino budget.
Any other questions for facilities and Chevalier? Any questions? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. You said it's half is funded casino mitigation. That's 32,000?
32,000 is the maintenance work, and then any other funding we need at the Chevalier comes from our casino mitigation fund.
Okay.
And our payments from our
Great.
Bloomin' Right.
Thank you.
Great. Any further questions? Any questions from members of the public? Rich, do you want to have any questions for Paul? None that you can say publicly. All right. I think that's all we have. Thank you so much. We really appreciate the work that your department does, that you do. Information technology. I like the coat. It's good. It's looking good.
I was supposed to be at dinner, but because the schedule got rearranged by one of you, I got put last. Dinner.
I'm sorry.
Dinner for Rich.
Is that really true?
As far as you know.
In cases where you do have urgent plans, always feel free. We will accommodate you.
I give 24/7 to the city. I don't have a life other than servicing its needs.
Just don't tell HR.
Hey, I'm salary exempt, so.
Yeah, exactly. Aren't we all?
Adam, if you could be.
Oh, you have a presentation?
That's what professionals do, my friend.
Oh, geez. I'm glad no one else is here.
We all know where we stand with one another. One big happy family.
This is my favorite presentation so far.
This rivalry is getting too heated.
I love it.
Not only will I be co-host.
All righty. All right, let me share.
Roll on up here. Just you and me, Rick.
Wait for him.
What? No. Do you have,
Usually people wait till I start talking to walk out, so
have you already been made a co-host?
that's what I'm trying to figure out. Oh, yeah. Cancel.
Oh, you are a co-host, I see.
I am. It's not giving me the, share. Don't let me share. Share screen.
So let's start to an IT presentation.
Yeah, it's really a little embarrassing. Oh, here we go. Share. There we go.
There you go.
That's all I had. I just wanted to share a picture of my dog and my cat. Now they're internet famous.
What are their names?
The dog is Linus and the cat is Larry. All right, so last year when I was here, I was on day 3 of the job, and half of you weren't even here yet. So I figure I don't know that there's ever been a comprehensive review of technology usage here in the city. So I thought I'd structure my presentation a little different than other people have been doing them. Plus I was an analyst in another life. That's all we do is presentations. So just a quick agenda, what I'll be covering, nothing major here. I'll get through this as quick as possible so we can all go home. Basically, when I came on board, there was nobody in the position for almost a year and a half. So they had a help desk. We have a third party called TOS, company that does, you can call them, what have you, get your password reset, get some help with things. But that relationship needs to be managed to get them moving in the right direction. They did the best they could. There was nobody here. They didn't have a person. It's tough to find the right skill set for this job, I think. So they took their time and did the best they could. So when I got here, I said, I need to assess everything soup to nuts. I used to live in Medford, just so you know. So I was well aware of where the city was from a technology standpoint. I don't feel that in the past 20, 25 years, much has been done in investment in technology here in the city. We lag pretty far behind our contemporaries in the area. So I kind of took a look at what was there and found what I expect to find. This is just a very short list of the things that weren't done properly or hadn't been done at all. There's a very, very long list that accompanies this I can share with anyone that wants to see it. But just an idea that even the basics weren't done to the degree they should have been done here from what I saw. So setting about that, I said, we're really in a firefighting mode right now. Everybody has problems all the time. People had literally learned to live with the problems that they had. And I find that unacceptable in this kind of position. So I spent a good amount of time in the beginning trying to stabilize things. I work with the help desk that we have to get them working in the way I wanted them to work, in the way giving customer service the way I felt they should be giving it. And then did some other things where I was able to deploy new assets to people. They had, people had computers that were 6, 7 years old. They were just frustrated with them, but, they learned to suffer in silence around here. So did as much as I could to try to get in the first 3 months, 4 months stability. And it worked. When I first came on board, the TOS, our help desk, was averaging about 165 tickets a month, calls from end users. Right now, we average about 50 to 55, so it's a reduction of about, I think, 63%. What that means is people are able to continue to be productive throughout the day, not facing constant interruptions, and it also, frankly, frees up my time to work on what I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about here, capital projects and improvements and things like that that are really going to move the city forward. I was we had a help desk. I wasn't brought in to do help desk. I was brought in to do digital transformation, and that's what I'm starting to do. So planning, these are the capital projects we're looking to kick off or have kicked off. We basically have most communities around here build municipal fiber optic networks. They did the most of that work between 2007 and 2012. Medford never did it. So that was high on my list to get started. One of the original thinking was they were going to put in fiber to the fire stations. And then I kind of took over that project and said, why don't we do a bunch of the other municipal buildings? So the first part of it will be all the fire stations will be connected, City Hall, Council on Aging, and Library, DPW. And then we will look in another phase, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, of tying up the rest of the buildings in there. And when I'll go on in a little more detail on another slide, just because I think it helps to understand, people look at the costs and they say, why are we spending that much when, it seems to be fine now. And I can speak to that in a little bit. The City Hall, where we are now, there's at least 4 different generations going back about 30 years of cabling the network. We got to replace all that. It just doesn't make sense anymore to struggle with it. We have problems with it all the time. And I always say the network here is a couple of cans and a piece of string. And then, one of the other important products too is, so the fourth one down, the Zetron replacement. So the Zetron is the system that public safety uses in the 911 center to alert the fire stations. They have a robust system that can tell them all kinds of different things, where it is, what have you, alerts them, wakes them up out of sound sleep by turning the lights on and playing this crazy Space Invaders noise. It freaks you out the first time you're in a station and it goes off. Doesn't even bother the firefighters. It's hilarious. But that is really the sort of nexus of that is in the actual 911 call center, where the operator is taking the calls. Right now, it's about 22 or 23-year-old system. The new system has a whole bunch of automations in it where it can really reduce the workload of someone when they're on a call with somebody that's in a crisis situation. They can focus on the person calling and less on keystrokes and things like that. So we're pretty excited about that, and the fire department is. And then just here in general in the city, and I'll talk about the phone system a little bit too. We're replacing all the phones because they're been end of life for forever and a day. And the phone system is, if you've ever used it, it's a mess. And it saves us a whole host of money by doing this. And then we're hopefully we're in the evaluation phase right now. If you look at the way our HR department, their workflow, it's all paper and moving papers around and what have you. And it's really just difficult on them. There's only 2 HR folks, it's Lisa obviously, but 2 generals in their benefits and recruitment. So they have to spend a vast majority of their time just doing everything manually. And if you go down and say, can I get a list of all the employees of the DPW, sort of thing, and start qualifying things, it's just a manual process. It could take them days to get through to find the data. So we've looked at HRIS systems. I know what they can do. We're evaluating some of the vendors out there that I think will fit organizations of our size, and hopefully this year, mid-year, fallish, we can start bringing that in and piloting it. So I just want to go in a little more detail on the fiber, because people look at the cost and say, well, why are we spending that? It's an infrastructure project, and it's kind of the basis of everything we're going to do going forward. But just as when I have a methodology of going through asking for money for projects, it has to return a certain amount of money or self-fund itself over time. So when you add up all the money we spend now by having distributed systems and what have you, every location building has its own internet connection. So you're paying $250 a month. Doesn't seem like a big deal. We'll multiply that out by 17. That's what we have. It turns into tens of thousands of dollars. We do this project, we have 1 internet connection for the city. So it's things like that. And then I don't have to buy duplicates of hardware, because I have to put hardware at every endpoint. I can get rid of all that infrastructure and not have paid those maintenance contracts. And so it kind of snowballs. It makes administration easier. Those costs go down. So it just kind of, even just the first year, we turn it live, you're looking at $110,000 I won't have to spend in additional money somewhere else. Still Lemming, do you have a question? You're still. Yeah, oh, didn't want to take them at the end or whatever. You guys do you. Oh, okay, whatever. I saw you for your hand up, so. And then same thing with the phone system. Right now, we get way overcharged by our phone vendor. Hopefully they're not watching this because I need them to keep going for a little while longer. But the call says we were actually able to roll the fire department in, we'll be able to cancel their contract. And then the only people that'll be outside of the phone system after we're done would be police and schools. And those are two organizations that I don't currently support. So they would be on their own, but everybody else, I think rec department, Chevalier, DPW yard, council on aging, fire department finally will all be wrapped to the new phone systems. And then you save 38 grand a year. So let's talk about the budget. We can take a look at that. There's a little, I don't know if you've had a chance to really go through it. I moved a bunch of things around just because to make it easier from an administrative standpoint, combined some accounts that were legacy accounts. I don't even know what the original intent of them was. So when we go through this, it looks like they stole a bunch of money from me, but it's not really accurate. We were paying the support for what's called admins, our financial software package, out of my budget. It didn't really make any sense to do that anymore. So I just transferred that back to finance. It's literally just fill out a piece of paper every year. So there's no point in me having to worry about that. And then more importantly, we see an addition of about 51,000 or so in the consulting. I think it's consulting, professional services. Last night, my esteemed colleague from the library went and talked about technology and what they use and what have you. So they had been under their own sort of support contract for their technology. The past few, it predates me being here. It's not very efficient. You have to have economies of scale and put everything in one. You can negotiate, you have better negotiating power. So we thought about it and said, why don't we move that over into my budget? And then I'll manage it since they use the same company for support that we do. It would just make sense. And then I would go back and negotiate with them. Both contracts are up July 1st and say, what can we do to combine these things? Where are there efficiencies we can make it a little better for everyone. So I'm still in the negotiation phases. It's going pretty well. I don't think we're that far apart. But yeah, that money was added over there to account for that. So it's before anybody gets we're underfunding the library and the IT director is taking books out of children's hands. That's not really the story. We're just moving the money from one spot to the other. At the end of the day, it gets spent. They get the same quality of service they've been used to. Nothing changes in that regard. So that's just want to make that clear. So Zach, if you have any question on the budget numbers or anything, just let me know because I'm going to move on real quick. And then there's this, I don't even know if I finished this slide, but it was much more cost savings. It was just low hanging fruit, fire departments always left on their own to their own devices for technology. Why, I have no idea, but I'm happy that I'm able to support them now. But then in going over contracts and whatever, I found just, a few things that it was easy to roll into either my budget or just cancel outright as we had redundant systems. So that's really all that's trying to show there. So, and I think that's it.
Director Lane, thank you very much for your thorough presentation.
Thank you.
A model for all of us. Any questions from members of the council? Councilor Lemon, then Councilor Collins.
Thank you. It's clear that you've been busy since you started here, and we're very grateful to have you. Is it, two questions. First, is it logistically possible, either technically or administratively, to connect to get the school system as well onto the same internet connection, potentially for more savings? You mentioned there Medford City Hall, the library, and some other place that wasn't the public schools.
I currently don't support the school systems. The school systems generally are networked slightly different. And the reason for that is this. When you have a Comcast or a Verizon come into your town, generally you shake them down. I mean, you negotiate with them to do certain things for the municipality. And that generally involves bringing fiber optic technology out to all the schools. All the schools are connected.
These meetings
fiber.
are recorded.
Huh? So all the schools currently are connected. We were actually strangely connected from here, that room right in there, up to the high school. Now the connection's broken, doesn't work right now, but it's Comcast originally put it in. Of course, Comcast doesn't run fiber anymore, so there's not much we can do about that. But we are this year, I believe, renegotiating with Verizon and Comcast again for the city. So we'll certainly have some latitude on what we can do. I would love, well, I'm not going to say what I was going to say, but yeah, let's have some latitude to get some things upgraded or updated where we need to be. But to answer your question, not that I'm avoiding it, right now schools aren't in scope. They have their own IT person up there. It just wouldn't be feasible the way things are architected to do that.
Okay. Second question, what was the $131 spent on a part-time employee?
I have no idea how that got in there. Or why that's been in there. There's also there was something in there for $1 for conferences. I'm like, who's going to $1 conference?
Huh.
But that 131 doesn't show up in my budget. So as a line item. I will say one thing about the salaries, down the bottom. I just want to make it clear that I did not get an 8% raise. That is simply from some of the department heads predates me. Were in a sort of union. We decided not to go forward with that in December. So that triggered the administration giving us the 2 years for 3 fiscal years, 2% for 3 fiscal years, retro back there. And then I believe this is accounting for a 1.3% increase for fiscal year 2025. So it's just that. It's not that I got a raise or anything. I just want to, so you'll see that in a lot of department heads, probably about 9 or 10. They didn't really, get bumped up. It's just a retro.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions for Councilor Collins?
Thank you for being so forthcoming about that. I did notice on some other budgets, so
Yeah.
thank you for speaking to it. Thank you as well for the most visual presentation of the night.
Thank you.
And no specific question for you. It's great to hear some of the details about, in addition to the whole scope of what you're doing, a lot of the consolidation of systems is great to hear. Happy that we're doing that. Thank you.
I just want to personally thank you for all the assistance you've given to us here. Emergency assistance, non-emergency assistance. There's a much better digital setup up here now for chairs of the council committees, school committee, to, be working on Zoom, managing it. There's a physical hard connection in case the Wi-Fi goes out. So making this kind of a foolproof setup up here as best as possible, even though I'm sure we try to foul it up as much as we can. And that's just been really great. So really thankful for that. Also for working with Kevin Harrington and myself on some of the consulting us on the audiovisual upgrade, and working the clerk's office as well. So just wanted to really thank you for that. And next time, especially if you're bringing slides next year, I may not remember this, but I hope you remember it. You can go first. So if you're on Big Long Night, seriously, and you remind me that I said it, if I'm still the president, fingers crossed, that's a commitment I'm happy to make.
No problem.
Put it in your calendar. Mostly because I want everyone to come with a PowerPoint. I think that's a great thing.
Yeah,
So
I'm surprised over what he does.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for members of the public? Seeing no members of the public present in the chamber are on Zoom, you are free to go.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And if we did make you miss dinner, I do apologize. Last department of the night, Law Department. Chief of Staff Nazarian representing the administration. Law Department budget, fiscal 24, $552,403. Fiscal 25, $530,035.80. Headcount going down from 3 to 2, minus 4% growth. The decrease is due to the reduction and removal of the assistant city clerk and some minor reductions in ordinary expenses. There is an increase in the city solicitor salary and an increase in the budget for outside legal counsel. Chief of Staff Nazarian. That's why I said assistant city solicitor, right? Oh, sorry, assistant city solicitor. My apologies. What a night. But yeah, so the removal of the assistant city solicitor position, taking the full-time head count down from 3 to 2. And so with that, we'll go to the chief of staff for further presentation.
Hello again. I know that the council's, very well aware of the challenges that we're facing in the school department budget. And, where the mayor, myself, and the finance team have been working hard to try to find the millions more that the school department needs. Candidly, the mayor asked that I say that if it were up to her, obviously we work collaboratively with the council, that she would propose removing both the city solicitor and the assistant city solicitor from the budget and using those dollars to go to the school department, and then using the KP Law resource to continue the work that we believe is allowed the city to move forward very more quickly, especially on a number of different areas. But again, as the mayor asked that I say, she views this as a compromise to allow the assistant city solicitor funds to go to the school department essentially, so that those funds can be used by schools, and maintain the city solicitor position. I do think that there's value in frankly either, not for nothing, but I think it's a challenging scenario, but I have said before, I've said probably year after year in front of this council, the number of disciplines, and I will read the list of disciplines that we really do draw upon with KP Law, can't be matched by a 2-person city solicitor team. It just can't. So from that perspective, I don't believe the council's under any impressions that would be the case, but the reality is that we would always need an outside vendor. And I think it's important that we have an outside vendor that can provide the level of support that our organization needs. There are so many discipline specific, and I'll just touch on those really quick. Labor and employment, contracts, our procurement office is often reaching out to KP Law, reviewing contracts. There's a lot that happens there. I just happened to start my time in the city of Medford in a temporary basis in the procurement office, essentially. And I know firsthand as to how much work that office uses under the retainer, fortunately. Real estate, land use, environmental, governmental information, and access, construction, litigation. We didn't discuss this earlier. I'm surprised. I meant to mention it, but obviously the recount, I'm surprised it didn't come up, but the recount that we had in December of 2023, obviously we got what is believed and across the state to be the expert in that area, Attorney Lauren Goldberg. I think many of the council members interacted with her, Attorney Goldberg, at that recount, and I'm sure you found her to be just as professional as we have experience. She's the managing partner of the law firm, fortunately. So we're very lucky to not only have her insight, expertise, and the ability to reach out to her and ask her any questions. As I said before, we were lucky enough to have her connect us with the city of Everett. So there's tangible and intangible benefits that I think that the city's receiving from the partnership that we've had for the last few years. So that just at a high level addresses, the change in terms of staffing. And, I'm happy to go through more information on the narrative and, the goals for next year. It's all very broad, but I'm happy to go through it if the council thinks it would be beneficial.
Any requests for the narrative or objections to the narrative? Does anyone want to hear it? Seeing no strong
Very broad,
opinions,
very
we'll go to
broad.
questions.
I don't think it's going to provide you that much, so just save yourselves the time.
Do want to say that is certainly no comment on the wonderful work of Jada Spencer, our
Thank you.
office manager and confidential
Thank
secretary.
you. This truly wouldn't be, this setup that we presently have in the absence of a city solicitor, and we've been trying. I didn't comment on the adjustment to the city solicitor salary that's proposed here, but we did received the council's request, and we did do our best to be as equitable as possible across the organization by taking our salary chart and doing what we could with that, but being careful to not go in a direction that would skew things significantly across the organization, because we have a lot of highly skilled professionals who have licensure that, I'd love to see the class and comp study to really help us with these things is the reality of the situation. So the only other thing I was going to say, back to Janice, Miss Janice Spencer, I really don't know how to thank her for all the work she's done. She's the one who helps us keep the glue together with that department, but she's also taken on the responsibility of records access officer in the absence of a city solicitor, which is a monumental task. Occasionally she'll tell me the challenges she faces. People will ask for a record, she'll get back to them, they'll be asked to pay an amount, and then they'll, have frustrations that they haven't received the documentation, but it does take a long time. We do have many, many departments that she has to reach out to compile documents, and it's not always 10 days, because under the law, we have 10 days to respond and provide an estimate of how much time it might take, because there are circumstances where the pile, I've had the building commissioner send me a photo of a pile about this high of public records that needed to be copied for, one public records request. And that's just one. And we receive, I'd guess, hundreds a month, hundreds. And that's not including police, for instance. And because they have their own records access officer, and I believe fire as well, but I have to double check that. Obviously, police gets a lot more public records requests too, so. Thank you.
Got it. Okay, questions from the council. Councilor Collins, Councilor Lemming.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Appreciate it. Don't have any specific questions for you. I just want to go on the record and state some impressions given in good faith. Obviously, it's no secret to anybody that the council has for a couple of terms been advocating for increased capacity within our in-house legal department, and I do hear you on the breadth of experience and expertise that KP Law brings to the table. I know that there have been many occasions when we benefited from having them as an available resource. I also think it's still true that they serve a different function than what we're hoping to expand in the in-house law department. Obviously, keeping and maintaining the role of city solicitor and assistant city solicitor over the long term is something that's really important to me. We know that this budget season, or I would say, speaking for myself, I'm also aware that this budget season is an extenuating circumstance. I think I'm still, as with the rest of the budget, most of the budgets that we've received, the departmental budgets we've received, don't have any big changes. Like, there isn't a great change in headcount. This is one where there is, and I think it's going to take me more than a day and a half to kind of absorb that and, see how I feel about it. I think that it's going to come down to, the context of the overall budget proposal that we receive. Because of course, these changes this year are all about context and making sure that we're putting resources where they're really needed. And of course, I'm talking about, the schools and making sure that we are maintaining our baseline, across the city and schools as an organization this year. But at the same time, this feels like a big change. I know earlier this spring, the council advocated for actually increasing the salary allocated to both city solicitor and city solicitor. So I do understand that if the premise is, why don't we nix both? This is a compromise from that starting position, but from the starting position of, we want to be competitive with other cities to fill both positions, this is a pretty big change. Just wanted to put that out there for the record. That's how I'm absorbing this proposed change. And I also, like I said, just to reiterate, I think that as with anything this year, it's going to come down to the context of the overall budget that we're passing this year and our plans for how we're going to fill gaps citywide. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vice President Collins. Councilor Lemming.
Thank you. So hypothetically, if we did have a city solicitor, how much do you think it would decrease the some of the line items here as well? So how much would, KP Law, it sounds like from what you were saying, would be necessary even in the case that we did have a city solicitor for more specialized services. How much of the services that they're providing now and, an approximate dollar amount do you think could be done by in-house legal?
That would be an incredibly difficult question to answer. It really depends on the specialty, experience, or otherwise of the incoming city solicitor, for instance. If that city solicitor has decades of experience, that would be a different equation. If that city solicitor is relatively new to municipal sector, or, frankly, we've met candidates who have worked on the private side only, right? They would need to get acquainted with the open meeting law, with the public records law, with the there's another law that somehow I'm not recalling right now as far as document. Our city clerk, I'm sure, would have it at the top of his mind.
Public records.
Document retention, thank you. Document retention law. That's like the bread and butter. That's the standard stuff, right? The public records and the open meeting law and retention. Those things, we had made an offer to a candidate not long ago that was a New Hampshire solicitor. That person would need to get acquainted with the state of Massachusetts laws. There's some similarities, but not all. So it would take some time potentially. Again,
Something that rewards institutional knowledge, which would be acquired over a period of time. So I would guess initially they'd be relying on KP Law a good amount. Then
that's the best summary to state. Yes.
But it also sounds like from what you were saying, FOIA requests and whatnot, you're personally handling a lot of the tasks that would otherwise fall on in-house legal counsel.
I am not. Janice Spencer, office manager in the law department, is handling those.
I'm sorry, I misheard that.
No worries. Thankfully,
thank
I am
you.
not. I feel for Janice. She does a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Lazaro.
We've been here for a while. I may be missing it. Where does the payments that we make to KP Law, what budget does that come out of? Is that included here?
That is included here. Basically the retainer comes out of this budget. As you can see on the second line under ordinary expenses, 010-151-5302, professional services legal. The budgeted amount last year was $96,000. The proposed budgeted amount for this year is $138,000. This coming year is $138,000. There was an increase to the cost.
So I guess what I'm asking is if the thinking here is to save an amount of money in the legal department so that it can be used in the school department to balance the budget, how much is being saved?
The proposed savings would be about $78,000, just $79,000 roughly in the assistant city solicitor. Otherwise, this budget would be that much larger.
This is something that is happening in various departments in order to balance the school budget in the meantime, so that because it's legally required that we have a balanced school budget to present to the state. But $78,000 is not a very large amount of money for a city's budget. From my perspective, I'm just saying that.
And to that, if I don't mean to interrupt, but to that I will say, it's not just $78,000. We have combed through a lot of budgets. These dollars are adding up.
Yes.
It's still a very fluid issue. We learned about that number, the gap, last week. We've been working, I can't say around the clock because I do sleep, but we have been working diligently on that issue. And these are ways that we can get pieces put together to make a larger pie to be able to address the school department issue. It's still a work in progress.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're going back to Councilor Lemming. Councilor Singh.
I think obviously this is a difficult issue to broach with the council because you and the mayor very much know where most of the council stands on this. I think when I think back to our first budget, Councilor Collins and my first budget, the conversations were that council wanted the solicitor and assistant city solicitor to cut the funding for KP Law. I think it was a reasonable compromise at that time to put in the two positions and to keep funding for KP Law, given what you said about the areas of expertise that KP Law does offer the city, that a lot of city staff have expressed interest and support for. But I also do very much believe that the solicitor roles are fundamentally just different roles than having legal advisors, legal consultants there. The interests are different. The ways that we can use them as a council, access them as a council are different as well. But I don't want to relitigate right now anything, any of those past discussions. I would agree with Vice President Collins that a lot of this is about context. And so I understand the change being made. I can't, have a very firm stance on it unless I know what's being made up from it, where, what does the rest of the budget look like. But I would want to say that, if the change makes sense, even if the change makes sense, and even if it's something that I could bring myself to support, I would really like to see a path back of adding this position back into the budget come the next budget for fiscal 26. I think that's a direction that we'll have to chart, and hopefully in the next month we'll have a better picture as to how, what's the big picture long-term plan to add the assistant solicitor position back into the general fund.
Thank you, Councilor Sang. I don't want to get into, going to work hard on what I'm about to say. I think there are other ways to address the school funding issue that do not include this cut. I think we are still discussing that, and I'll leave it at that for that element of it. I definitely don't support this model. I certainly wouldn't support a fully outsourced model. I will say that in conversations with counsel who work for the firm that we are outsourcing to, there have been mentions that the model we are using is unorthodox. I would think that they would benefit from us moving to that model, and for them, for some of those councils to say that they would see an in-house model, at least partially, being more of a, I don't want to say recommendation, but I've heard from members of the legal team that we work with that element is important. They think that there's a lot of value there. So, that's really where I'm at on it. I think we had a budget agreement 2 years ago that was predicated on having 2 full-time staff members in the law department. I do not think the circumstances of this budget abrogate that agreement, and I certainly don't think that. I think there are other ways to find the solution that we're seeking to find by removing this position. I also don't think that $78,000 is enough at this point to hire a qualified assistant city solicitor, so that's another discussion. But I just think there's a lot of work that I think this council has been put in a position of not having in-house counsel that has put us in difficult positions in the past. I think we work our best with counsel. I think we're very judicious with trying not to reach out to counsel because we understand that there could be added costs to all of that. I think basically the way that all of that works has put this council in difficult positions at certain times, and having in-house counsel, a city solicitor, and I'll just add that there have been a variety of processes and procedures that have been drawn out in terms of codification and of ordinances. And again, it's not a comment so much on any failing of a person as much as it is that there's no lawyer in this building that you can walk up to their office and say, hey, do you have 5 minutes? And know that that's going to be the position and opinion of the city. And I think that that's an incredibly important thing to have. So I'm glad to see the increased salary here. I hope that attracts a qualified candidate. I think losing the other full-time staff person in the department may detract a qualified candidate from wanting to come here, knowing that they won't have an assistant. So those are really my main concerns here. My preference would be not even a path in the future, but to just have a level staff funded budget here. If it gets, if it's a take back at the end of the year, like it has been the last 3 fiscal years, it's a take back at the end of the year, right? Or maybe I'm not using the right term, but yeah, I just think that I don't think that using this department's budget to address the problems that are being stated is the most judicious course. And I'll leave it at that. I'm hopeful that we can continue to work collaboratively through the process and understanding of the deep underfunding of the schools, and find an alternative to changes in the law department structure. Instead, find an alternative to that as we look to close the gap on the school funding. In the absence of being able to do that, I think some commitment in future budgets that this would be a key priority, and that we would look to bring back the second full-time person potentially at a more competitive rate would also be potentially a path that we could take, although I'm just speaking for myself. So that's where I'm at on this. It has been certainly a top priority of the council, a major issue and a major question that we've been hearing. So there are a lot of places that I would be more than happy and willing to look to address the financial issue. I think this is one where it's really tough to do that. So that's all I'll say from my perspective. Any further comments by members of the council on the law department budget? Vice President Collins.
Thank you. And again, not to belabor any points, but just, I think this is obviously an ongoing conversation. The conversations about any changes to any departmental budget don't open and close in the preliminary budget hearing. I think that's one advantage of this new structure. We have many more opportunities to talk about this, to discuss and negotiate. But I think I think something that's come up for me, even just in this one meeting, which I think has been useful and clear in the way that many department heads are thinking about their budgets and the way that we're thinking about the organizational budget overall, is what are we investing in and what's the return that we get from those investments? And I know in a year where there's a really emergent need, that conversation gets a lot harder, and we're trying to fill a multi-million gap for the schools and contemplate all possible solutions for doing that. And I think that we have to be talking about all of them. But I wouldn't want what a well-resourced city council is able to do for the city in the short and long term to fall out of that discussion. Even just thinking about the plans that we have for this year, and where I think we're fairly well supported right now on one of our major projects being the zoning overhaul, because of the zoning consultant that we do have the resources for the rest of this fiscal year and the next one. But we also are going to be working on a city charter. Especially we're talking about the context of a major budget shortfall. One of the few things that this council has direct influence over is making the zoning decisions that affect business development. That could be one of the pieces of solving our budget deficit for the longer term, so we don't keep coming back and having budget discussions like these when we're trying to fill gaps and trying to cut things that really shouldn't be cut. And so I think this is one of the first, apart from the schools, this is one of the first really major consequential, in my opinion, cuts that has been proposed this budget season. But I don't think that we should, I think that as we contemplate it, we need to consider what we're leaving on the table by not, continuing to try to empower the city council with this piece of the puzzle when it comes to our legal representation. And again, I know this, I feel that me and my fellow councilors who have been on for more than one term, have a different perspective on this than folks who have been here for less time. But, I understand that there's a difference in, and this doesn't take it all away from what KP Law provides, because everything that you said, I think, is totally true. And I think it's also true that having legal representation that is really for the council is different and is responsive to the council in a way that is different and is accountable to the council's goals in a way that is distinct from the type of service that KP Law provides, and not to say that that in any way diminishes what they do, but just to flesh out the points that I was making previously, because I know sometimes I can be a little abstract. And I just, since this is the first time we're countenancing this proposed change in public, I just wanted to put that out there for the record of some of what's on my mind as we consider this cut as part of the package that we try to make to cut our way to resolving that deficit. And what gives me hope is knowing that there are a lot of other solutions that we can, and I know that people are contemplating for how to arrive at a solution that leaves all of the critical functions that the city provides, continuing to provide great service for residents and students and teachers. So I look forward to continuing that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Collins. I just had one more question. Will there be a cap change presented to the council to reflect the salary change proposed? And would that come with the budget and with an effective date of July 1, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, we iron those things out, but essentially there would need to be another paper. Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think just thinking through in my head, that's probably the best way to do it. Then we avoid any sort of chapter 40, 43 issues. So. Want to give you the floor back. I know we all just said a bunch of stuff, so.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And I recognize, and I think Councilor Sang said it, this isn't necessarily an easy conversation. I recognize that the council and the administration have had a number of discussions on this topic. I think in practicality, I think the way I see it is I don't think that this proposed change really changes anything for the council. Frankly, and we may end up disagreeing on that, but this is a discussion. This is something that we will continue to discuss throughout. And as we try to figure out where, how to finalize a budget this year, right? So, I don't take what I'm saying to be necessarily, I want to codify, I want to preface the following comments that these are really mine and these are my reflections as chief of staff and not necessarily of the mayor's. Probably hard to split the two, but I'll try to make that distinction just to tell you that, when I look at this model as far as the city solicitor is concerned, I think, we could hire a city solicitor and we can hire an assistant city solicitor, and they're both going to be bombarded. And the assistant city solicitor is going to be accountable to the city solicitor. And the city solicitor is going to be accountable to the administration. And I say that to be just completely upfront and honest. I mean, these staff positions are staff positions of the city, and they are under the direction of the mayor. And I don't say that to say anything other than, we are going to continue to work together and collaborate and provide resources and figure out ways to solve. And I think there's been an incredibly positive, very large steps towards developing better working relationships. To be completely candid, I don't think anyone of us thinks probably any differently. I don't think we see it any differently. I think the public can probably see it. I think that's very good. So it's not to say anything other than to say I don't see a different resource. I don't see a different approach to the model, because I don't think the council can draw on KP Law or, if it was another firm, those resources will still be finite, whether we have an assistant city solicitor or not. They will still be finite no matter how you deal with it. We have 26 plus department heads in this organization. We have 7 city councilors. We have obviously the mayor and myself and many others who would need to draw upon. We have departments that have staff within them that are contacting legal for advice and resources, whether it's our CPA manager or some other position in the CDBG manager in the organization. It is not just 26 plus 7 plus 2. It's much more than that. Anyone, whether having one full-time city solicitor or a full-time assistant city solicitor, their time is going to become very narrow. So I just say that to put into perspective, kind of my angle. And I know the angle that I'm looking at something may not be the angle you're all looking at something, but I want to put in your heads, just like you're putting in my heads, the angles that I see this and how this might play out. That city solicitor and that city solicitor, they're not going to be able to attend to everything. And it's not going to materially change in my mind, how the distribution of resources becomes. And I do believe, and I think, maybe I'm mistaken. I'm not sure. I wasn't here. I can't speak to it, but it's my understanding, this council has done such a good job over the past several years that there are more ordinances that are getting pushed through. And yes, it does take time. It all takes time, but I think that's how government works, and government has to work sometimes, right? It does take time to go through a process. Sometimes there are scenarios where something gets generated at the city council level and it's an idea and a draft ordinance gets written and it gets passed to legal to be reviewed. Legal pulls in our department heads because sometimes that has to happen. Other times, the council members are working with the department head and the department heads already, or the necessary department heads are already looped in. I think there is a good model because we've seen the council be very successful with ordinances and changes and review. But that's just Nina Nazarian, Chief of Staff, telling you my perspective and my angle. And it's not meant to take away from anything you all have said, just to tell you that I don't know that much changes, but again, we're looking at this probably from a different angle.
Thank you, Madam Chief of Staff, and I appreciate that. I think what you said highlights, though, the difference, especially for us. The CPA manager can go ask KP Law for something, but a counselor has to ask me to ask you to ask them, right? So it's a different, we don't even have the same access to legal counsel. I mean, you haven't denied access, and I'm not implying that, but I'm saying that the process for us is like 2 more steps than it might be for a non-department head staff person.
I will tell you that the CPA manager reaches out to the department head before accessing.
One step more.
Yeah, but there is also an inherent, I had this conversation with Councillor Lemming, and again, this is Nina Nazarian speaking. But there is, the city council is a body. The city council acts as a body. And those are unique things to consider, right? If every city councilor were to take a specific action without the city council, without the body's involvement, that would be contrary to how it functions. And so I say that with all due respect and not meaning to be in any way, shape, or form, minimizing the point you're trying to make, but the council is a body. And again, that's Nina Nazarian speaking and not meant to be anything but kind of talk this out.
That's kind of the point I'm making, though. I don't think that because we are members of a legislative body, it limits our rights to reach out to city staff members or to independent resources for research. But I don't think we need to debate our theories about that tonight. More my point is that we make the law. And right now we are making laws often without a lawyer in the room who is there to serve us. We can ask for it. We work around the schedules of KP Law. They are often very flexible. Again, I'm not trying to point fingers at individuals there's a difference between having someone who represents and is paid by just the city of Medford, who works in an office at Medford City Hall, who can build a relationship and grab a snack with a department head or a staff member, or sit around a table with the city council in the committee room or here, versus people that we see on Zoom every so often. I know Janelle Austin pretty well now, but I know her now about as well as I knew Mark Rumley or Kim Scanlon. And I've worked with Janelle for 4 years. I worked with Mark Rumley for 0 days. And I worked with Kim Scanlon for 1.5 years. And some of that is, hey, Kim, in the hall. And some of that is walking into the clerk's office and having a conversation you didn't expect to have that generates a different result. I think, to be honest, it's the Same reason that there's a policy where remote work is not the standard operating procedure of this city, right? It's because having the people in the place doing the thing is generally perceived, especially in this work, to be of government, of serving people and engaging with people, to be the better model. So that's my position as individual counselor. I strongly and firmly believe that while KP Law, I would be fine with KP Law at 138,000 if it also meant a city solicitor at 160,000 and an assistant city solicitor at a competitive salary. I got no problem with that. I respect KP Law's specialty and expertise. I just think that there's a fundamental difference between outsourced legal counsel and an in-house person dedicated to the city of Medford all the time. And I think that it would make our job as a council, as a body, easier to know that we're going to have to build that relationship. Every time we're writing an ordinance, we talk to a different person. We have different conversations. We have an hour-long disagreement because we don't understand each other's communication style. I mean, it's just, it comes down to like these very personal and but also very tangible realities of, oh, sorry about that. I don't know why my phone is ringing at me. Probably telling me I need to go to bed. But in any case, it's just, it is serving this purpose well enough for us to get work done, but it is not making it easy for us to excel. And I think that has been my experience now in my third term. And I certainly don't think that the more drastic course suggested is something that we should move towards, to say remove the city solicitor position because that'll save another 100,000 for the schools. I think we need to find real sustainable long-term solutions and on that question. But I also just think in principle that this is just certainly not the approach that the council would want, even though I can respect what you're saying that under the current charter, the solicitor reports to the mayor. But I just think that role, in my experience, in my conversations with counselors for many terms, in my conversations with people who've held the position of solicitor in the past, and in my conversations, as I said, with members of the legal team that we hired to do the solicitor's job right now, there's a lot of value to having that position filled and building that in-house knowledge and interpersonal relationship. So I don't think we're solving it tonight. It's a preliminary meeting. I think that point is incredibly well taken. Haven't seen the budget yet, so maybe we'll get somewhere different than this. And I'm glad that we had this conversation now versus having this be a conversation in the middle of June where motions are made that none of us want to make or like. So I'll leave that for another day. Any further discussion on this item, and I will allow you to respond.
I don't have much else to say. I think the only other thing that I would say, and it was a point you made earlier, President Bears, as to the unorthodox, I think you called it unorthodox. I don't know, I can't speak to perspectives, but, and what I can tell you is I've worked for a number of communities. Form of governments were different, but, outside legal counsel is not necessarily unorthodox across the Commonwealth. I don't know what the comparative is, but I don't feel that I wouldn't, by no means am I suggesting that there was anything stated tonight that I think has been unfair or otherwise, but I think historically there have been comments by, maybe former city councilors as to the intent or otherwise the nature of, or the just bad information, misinformation has been stated in the past about this topic. And I'm not saying any counselors on this council have said any of those things, but I'm really not saying that. But I think former counselors have made points that have confused the situation. And I just want to say that, I don't think it's an unorthodox style, but I haven't studied the matter across the Commonwealth. I can just tell you that there's a number of communities that do, utilize the support of outside counsel.
Absolutely. And I agree with that. I believe, as you just did, most of them are towns. I'm not aware of a city that does it. I think that was the point that the person I was, and I'm not quoting them and saying unorthodox, that's my description of their words. But
And again, this model presents a city solicitor, so I just
Yes, and it
point that
does,
out.
and
Yeah,
it
and I know
does.
you acknowledge that, so.
and it does, no,
yeah.
and that's very true, and I don't, it sounded like taking it was an option.
I was asked to state to the council what
Yeah.
the mayor, how the mayor would do this, given what we've seen in terms of demand and, product.
I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Well, I don't think we're solving it tonight, but I think all of our opinions have been stated clearly. Does anyone else have any comments? There's literally no one else in the Zoom and no one else in the room, so I won't even ask for the public comment.
Motion to
Where
adjourn.
did they all go?
On the motion to report the questions from the committee tonight to the administration and to adjourn by Councilor Lemming, seconded by Councilor Lazaro. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Meeting is adjourned.